Okay, we're recording.
Perfect. All right. At this time, I will call the Rockford Area Schools Independent School District 883 Board of Education to order. It is 6:32 p.m. and this meeting is being held via teleconference. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next is board roll call. Brady Anderson. Brady, you'll need to unmute your phone.
Yep.
All right, Brady Anderson.
Ready?
Here.
So,
Okay. Eric Gordy. Beth Kraska.
Here.
Kevin Campbell.
Here.
Jessica Johnson. Here. Amy Edwards is here. We do have quorum of the board. All right. Next, I will read a opening statement. Just again, this is a whole new world for us, and so I just want to talk through the rules of engagement and how we're going to be managing this board meeting tonight, just to kind of keep us all on the same page. So, due to the current federal and state emergency declarations, the Minnesota directive to residents to stay at home and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, this meeting of the Rockford Area Schools Board of Education is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota statutes 13D.021-meetings by telephone or other electronic means. Due to the health pandemic, the school board determined that it is not feasible for at least one board member, the superintendent, or the school district's legal counsel to be physically present at the regular meeting location, and that it is not feasible for the public to attend this meeting at the regular meeting location due to the health pandemic. Persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location by phone call. School board members are reminded to mute their microphone or phone when they are not speaking. School board members who wish to speak should use the chat feature via Google Meet's meeting platform and then wait to be recognized by the chair. The chair will determine the order in which board members wishing to speak will be recognized, and when recognized, the board member should unmute the microphone or phone, speak, and then mute their device. All votes will be conducted by roll call. Each board member should wait until their name is called before voting. Persons monitoring this meeting from a remote location may submit a public comment by filling out a public comment form, which has a link located on the district website, and follow the directions on the form. This meeting is being recorded. Access to the recording will be made available on the school district's website as soon as it is reasonably possible. So this evening, we have all of our individuals that'll be presenting. We should be able to video conference in, and then we've also made available the telephone number for anyone that wishes to listen along. The other thing before we jump into the agenda is I wanted to just take a minute to reflect, just for a minute. It was March 15th that we last met for a regular board meeting, or March 16th, I apologize. The day prior to that, Governor Walz gave the declaration that schools in Minnesota would be held via distance learning. That was 1 week prior to Rockford Area Schools spring break. The entire district literally needed to turn upside down and try to figure out the best way to meet the educational needs of our students in a really short period of time with limited resources, but a lot of passion, a lot of heart, and a lot of really good ideas. all of the administrators, and I look so forward to this evening's board meeting because it will be a great update on what has happened and what is going to happen. But I know that all of our administrators, staff, faculty pitched in so many ways in order to meet that March 30th deadline to make distance learning a reality for our students. As a parent, as a board member, as a community member, I couldn't be prouder of Rockford area schools and how we showed up. I'm not sure that any other person in this district, in this nation, in this state has ever had to react to a global pandemic quite like this. So we are literally writing the book as we go, and I'm so impressed. So with that, I would just like to start this meeting on that tone of gratitude to everybody in this district that has really pulled together to make this where we are today for our kids. And also with a reflection that I completely also would imagine that there is not an educator, staff member, person out there that's gone into this profession that has said, this is the way I thought I would be teaching. And this is what I thought the end of a school year would look like. Or this is what I thought that watching the seniors that I've cared for and taught all the way along would be experiencing the end of their school year. I firmly just wanted to acknowledge that, as I don't believe that anyone would have ever thought this would be our reality. So with that, that is my opening statement this evening. And I just wanted to express gratitude and acknowledge that this is absolutely not what any of us would expect to be doing right now. With that, I would like to move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of our agenda. And I am fine. I know I said put the chat function on, but just, yeah, unmute and speak for this part.
Eric Gordy, I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I have a first. Do I have a second? Could I have a second to approve the agenda, please?
I'll approve this. I'll make a second. This is Beth Praska.
I have a second by Beth Praska. Any further discussion around tonight's agenda? Pending no further discussion per our board protocol, this will be a roll call vote. Brady Anderson. All right. Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
And Beth Praska.
Aye.
Amy Edwards, aye. The agenda has passed. All right. Next agenda item, we will move into recognition, and I will turn it over to our superintendent's office. Ms. Steen.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Chair Edwards, thank you for taking us back a little bit. I will save my comment for when we move further into the agenda. So I'll just leave that there. The recognitions this evening are kind of a carryover from March, because as you just stated, our last board meeting was within 24 hours of the governor's declaration. And so we were just trying to turn things real quickly. And so the recognitions this evening are a little old, if you will, stale, but we'd still like to recognize the kids for what they did 30 days ago. So starting with Reams. Reams would like to recognize Alex Ross, who lovingly takes his little brother to preschool every morning before he goes to class. He has such a great heart for his siblings. And, you know, a month ago, Reams, our elementary school, was celebrating Siblings Day. And so this was just a shout out to Alex Ross for for taking care of his younger brother on a daily basis. So congratulations, Alex. Rockford Middle School and Center of Environmental Studies would like to congratulate this year's winners of Battle of the Books. And so I have several of them here. For 5th grade, Allison Burvig and Katie Ikes won 1st place in 5th grade. Moving on to 6th grade, Battle of the Books. 1st place was Laura Ikes and Olivia Kistner. Moving on to 7th grade, 1st place winners, there's 3 of them. Lizzie Kartok, Ella McIntry, and Oliver Stewart, 1st place in 7th grade. And moving on to 8th grade, there was also 3 1st place winners, Austin Babbitts, Chase Evans, and Nathan Woodward. Congratulations for the winners of Battle of the Books this year. Congratulations, kids. Moving on to the high school. Again, recognition is a little stale, and I apologize for that, but we never got to acknowledge our boys basketball team. So Rockford High School boys basketball team won the Minnesota Basketball Coaches Association Teams Academic Section Championship. So let me say that again. The Rockford High School boys basketball team won the Minnesota Basketball Coaches Association Teams Academic Section Championship. Our team's academic accomplishment would have been on display during the state basketball tournament. They usually display the winners throughout the tournament. But in addition to that, the players will receive a certificate of achievement, and it'll be sent to every participant, every player's home. In recognition of them being selected as the Basketball Coaches Association academic champion. Congratulations to our team, our school, our coaches, and the athletic department for promoting such quality student athletes. We are proud of the accomplishments of these students on and off the court in order to deserve such an honor. And it really is an honor because, again, our school was selected based on the Coaches Association. So that's a big deal. And then the last recognition at the high school, again, it's not as timely as it would have been, but the DECA program, our DECA kids, they competed back in February at a meet here in the Twin Cities. And we'd like to recognize Kaylee DeWolf and Carter Kolvavic for qualifying to represent Rockford at the DECA Nationals in Nashville, Tennessee. Unfortunately, DECA had to cancel the national conference. It would have been April 28th through May 3rd. But so of course, Kaylee and Carter will not be participating, but do want to recognize them for their efforts and for representing Rockford here in Minnesota and being winning that berth to a national championship. So congratulations, DECA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next we will move on to public comments. And I'll just read the brief statement about public comments. Pursuant to the peacetime emergency due to COVID-19 virus declared in the Minnesota Governor's Executive Order 20-01 and the March 16, 2020 presidential guidelines to limit gatherings to no more than 10 people, and as well as a Minnesota Department of Health guidelines, attendance of the public at this meeting would not be feasible pursuant to state statute. A public comment form will be available to the community for input, and the school board will read comments during the regular meeting. I did check my in-basket, and there are no comments that have been logged at this time to be read. So we will move on, and I will just add one gratitude to Kathy, who got that Google form all set up on the website, and it's pretty clear how to put the public comments in, and they'll be submitted and all of that. So thank you for that, Kathy. I do want to acknowledge the work that you did there to get us all organized in that fashion. Really appreciate it. All right, next agenda item that we'll move on to is our consent agenda. This is a roll call action. I would take a motion for our consent agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve our consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a first by Kevin Campbell. I have a second by Jessica Johnson. Any further comment or discussion? All right, pending no further comment or discussion, roll call vote. Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Beth Praska.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Brady Anderson.
Aye.
And Amy Edwards. Aye. Consent agenda items pass unanimously. Thank you. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Dean to begin this section of our agenda of high student achievement.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. I just wanted to make a brief statement before we get into the principal's reports, because as you outlined just a minute ago, we have been just never in our lifetime, of course, have we ever experienced anything like this. And I want to take us back actually to Friday the 13th, because Friday the 13th, we met as a crisis team, and many of the folks who will be reporting out this evening are part of our crisis team. But we had decided that evening or that afternoon that we were going to close down the building to visitors and start asking some of those protocol questions. And I'll never forget the date because it was Friday the 13th. And then, of course, 48 hours later, Governor Walz then made his declaration. And then 24 hours after that, we had our March board meeting. So it's been quite the past 30 days, something that we've never experienced before. But I tell you, when you hear the reports this evening, the staff of Rockford area schools has done an incredible job in the past 1 month to be able to turn what we've always known to do and to be able to turn it around. Unlike other crises that have happened in our country, there's not a precedence to what we're going through right now. And this staff stepped up, they leaned into the challenge, and every single person in this organization just did what they had to do to make the teaching and learning experience a reasonable experience for all of our students and all of our families. And so again, hopefully you're going to hear that in the reports tonight. But again, I just want to publicly thank the entire Rockford area administrative team, Rockford area schools administrative team, the principals for doing an incredible job over the past 30 days, because they truly are the heroes. So I'll turn it over to the first principal report, which is Brenda Nyhus.
Good evening, everybody. Boy, we've talked a lot lately about what is going on, and I said, I've told a lot of people, most of us have spent our entire life in education, in school. We started out in either preschool or kindergarten. We went on to middle school, high school. We went on to college. We became teachers, administrators, and all of a sudden our world is completely upside down. And I would say, I would echo both what Rhonda and Amy have said. Not only our teachers, but our clerical staff and our custodians and our paraprofessionals have stepped up and have really, really done some amazing things. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about when I submitted my report, I said I have 6 bullet points, but I could talk for an hour. I won't, but I could talk for an hour about what has happened and what's going on. The distance learning started obviously on the 30th, and kudos to teachers who literally gave up their spring break and just hunkered down, worked together, worked virtually. They had 2 days in our building, and we asked them to step away and not be part of the building and not even step into the building. And so they did most of this work at a distance. They have put together their distance learning plans, which we are tweaking a little bit. We're learning things, and we said we would continue to learn things as we moved forward. We're tweaking a little bit so they look really similar. I'm going to send out some information this coming week about just kind of what that change will look like. I've tried to communicate with kids and with parents and send out several videos and just try to, let them see my face. That's really important to kids right now. I heard back from lots and lots of parents who have said, oh my gosh, that means the world that my kid gets to just see your face or the teacher's face. And so there's a lot of really creative ways. I watched a video this afternoon of Mackenzie Gregory, who comes over and does farm day with our kindergartners, and she was out in the pig barn and she was making a video for the kindergartners so that learning can continue. It's been so incredible to watch the way people step up. There were some growing pains. There still are growing pains. We're learning things. Parents are learning things, and yet we're doing it, and so we have, I think the things we're learning along the way is how do we help our EL students who don't understand the language? How do we help our families who didn't have a device? How do we help those folks and give them the support they need? How do you work with a special needs child from a distance when they're one-on-one with you at school? So we're learning things, and like I said, I'm really, really impressed with what my staff is doing from STEM to STERN. So the feedback has been great with teachers. We continue to have staff meetings often. We're talking a lot about how do we continue to move forward if this goes on long term, which we have not gotten the official word yet, but you and I both know it's not looking good. And so we've talked a lot about that. I'm going to speak to attendance a little bit. Attendance, obviously, how do you take attendance with a child every day? It's a little bit tricky, especially when you've got kindergartners and first graders. But I have teachers who are maybe posing a question of the day. And if the child has answered the question, they are marked as present. Sometimes they're taking pictures and sending things in and saying, this is what I did for work today. Or they're sending little videos, or they're connecting with kids. As you get into that 3rd and 4th grade, they're working with the Google Classroom. So it's a little bit easier because once they sign in, we can mark them present. But that has been a little tricky. The next thing we're going to tackle is grading. How are we going to grade kids? How do you grade a child who's at home with a parent who's completely engaged, who might be a teacher, to a child whose parent doesn't understand the language? And let's be fair to kids, and how do we hold them harmless? And so lots of conversations administratively about that. And like I've told my teachers, we need to walk before we run. I've been in a lot of meetings with area principals, and everybody is grappling with the same thing. So it's not just us. And I know that we say that a lot. And when you sit in those chat meetings with them, you go, wow, everybody really is grappling with these things. We've had I'm going to give a huge shout out to Rita Smock, Shay Raskowiak, and Mary Lenars, who cleaned out every single desk, every single locker, every single cubby in that building. They went through and cleaned out the refrigerators of the teachers. I mean, you name it, they did it. They bagged everything up. They put everything in alphabetical order in the gym. We had parents come in last week. As of this morning when I walked in, we had 70 bags left. That includes our preschool students, so preschool and elementary students. And they have called all 70 of those families as of today, and they were coming in fast and furious today to pick up their things. So we're hoping by the end of the week that we've returned everybody's items to the families. I'm holding all of the lost and found until if it's the fall before parents can get in, then we're going to hold it. they deserve that. They haven't had a chance to look through that, and we've got a boatload of boots and snow pants and all those kind of things that we don't necessarily want people to have to go rebuy. So we usually donate that at the end of the year. We're going to hang on to that. So that's kind of where we've been, what we've done. Looking forward, we're going to be addressing, like I said, grading, continuing to meet the needs of students, and tricky things like, how do we place kids? Jessica, I'm going to look to you. You can attest to this. When we place kids, you lay everything out like a big puzzle. And, how do we put these kids in this class for next year? And how do you do that virtually? We're going to talk about that at my staff meeting tomorrow morning. So that's going to be tricky too. And, we got a lot of smart people out there, and we'll figure out a way. But like I said, it's one hurdle after another, and we think we kind of have it going, and then it's the next thing that comes up. And I cannot say enough to all of my staff members, and I don't care what they teach or what they're doing, how they've stepped up and what they've worked on and how they're connecting with kids. It's just really fun to see. I have a teacher who's having their students make videos for each other, and he said, can I do that? I said, you have complete control of that. If it's inappropriate, or if you see something inappropriate, then you don't post it. But then that's their way to talk to each other and connect with each other. And so we've got just a lot of really creative things happening. Obviously, most of our arts experiences happen in the spring. Our artist in residence, I've only had one this year with my third graders. Everybody else's were canceled. So there's been a lot of really, bummer things at the elementary too. No, it's not as big as graduation, and it's not as big as, your final season of sports as a senior or things like that. But artist in residence opportunities have been canceled. Arts and academics, our MCA testing, obviously, and those kind of things have been put by the wayside. But we're moving forward. Kids miss each other. Kids miss their teachers. We had lots of parents who came and picked up their child or their child's things, and kids saw, especially when they saw our paras and those folks that they know, burst into tears and just say, I really miss my friends and I miss school. So it's weighing heavily on them. We do have our counselor checking in with our kids that we have had very little contact with. So we're following up with those kids as well. Like I said, I could go on and on and on about all the tiny little idiosyncrasies of what people are doing, but super, super impressed with my staff. Very, very proud of them. And I'm really proud of our kids and our parents too, because they're doing their very best. And that's all we can ask. And the thing I say all the time is, at least it's April and it's not November. We're heading into the end of the year, and, we'll pick up the slack where we need to next year. But again, I can't say enough about our staff, and I'm so proud of them. So that's my report tonight.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I will recognize Kevin Campbell for a question.
Perfect. Wonderful. One of the things I want to say is nice job. Yeah, I think one of the things that's been very evident is each school has an age level has different challenges, right?
Very much
so. I just thinking about all the families, and as you talked about the different systems at home to set up a kid for success or not or have it more challenging. I think, wow, that's if there's an age group, it's your age group that you're in charge of that has all that. So when I think about it, it gets me out. So I got to change it. So next, I need to know, what is one unexpected positive thing that you're learning through this that you might go, hey, as a district, this is something that we might want to continue?
I would say the one unexpected positive is the force that it's making us dig into technology deeper. As we sit here and we have a meeting like this, we worked earlier this year. We started to do a little bit with one of my grade levels with Edmentum, and we were doing some work with them, and the first meeting I had with them was all virtual like this, and it kind of blew my mind, and I was like, this is just what they do all day, because they were all over the country, you know, and this is what they do, and now this is what we do all day long. This is what we do, but I think it might change the face of how we set kids up even in the classroom, and I think teachers are going to use it a little differently, and I think it's going to move us forward. We're forced to learn it right now. We're forced to use it, and yet at the end of the day, it's going to make us all better. I think the other thing that I would say that is an unexpected positive is I think there's going to be, I know there's a lot of funny memes out there and about homeschooling kids. And I mean, all you got to do is jump on Facebook and there's just one after another, and they crack me up. But at the same time, there's a little bit of truth to that. And I think that there's going to be a whole new appreciation for education. I think there's also going to be a whole new appreciation for students appreciating each other. You know, they don't realize how much they miss each other. And I think there's going to be a whole new appreciation for that level. And, you know, I'm always about kindness, but bringing that level of kindness and connecting with their friends, because when it's taken away from you, it's and they can't have it, it's affecting them. So I think there'll be a whole new level of that. So that was more than one, but.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions out there? I'm looking around. I don't see anyone. I see a comment from Beth that says, great job.
Thanks, Beth.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. That was a fantastic report. And as I'll echo what Kevin said, I mean, you've got the littlest of people that need to figure out a completely different way to engage with their teachers and their parents engaging with it. And it really, there's a lot of complexity there for sure. So thank you so much for this update. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Next, we'll call on Dr. Anderson Hume for the middle school update.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Thumbs up. Excellent. Thank you. I only have 9 brief points for you tonight. So to echo a lot of what Ms. Nye, who's the elementary principal, had to say, I'll start bragging again and just really talk about how fortunate I am to have the staff that I have, and really narrowing it down to 3 things. Work ethic beyond belief. I mean, they're still working 10-hour days on average. And I know because I've gathered that data, and that's a lot of work on top of having no spring break. And I know we talk about some people not taking their spring break, and it's, I don't know of anybody who took a spring break. Their attitude, right? Even the teachers who are fearful about new things that are coming, they're still willing to stick their nose out there and do the best thing that they, that they can. And the last thing is priorities. It's kids first and foremost, and they understand that, they're experts in their field that are getting paid to be here and do everything that they can for kids. So I'm, again, very fortunate about who I get to work with every day. The other big thing, I think, our distance learning plan, I'm really proud of how that came out, and several reasons for that. I think number one, we were able to build off something that we already had in place, our online planner. And so we wanted that to look familiar to parents, because we were more concerned about parents than we were kids. I mean, middle school kids and technology, they're going to figure it out fairly quickly. We knew that parents were going to be pretty overwhelmed, and how do we manage this stuff? And my kid's getting close to high school, and I need to make sure they're getting everything they need to, before they get there. So that was an easy step for us. And again, I think the district as a whole kind of took on a lot of the characteristics that our online plan had. And again, that just is a shout back to our teaching staff about how the quality of work that they did. The start of the second week, we added a new sheet to ours, which was a checklist. And again, that came from Mr. Reek, my 7th grade math teacher, and my 5th grade science teacher, Hannah Oliverius, working together, saying, how can we make this even clearer for people? And I've never got more feedback than anything in my life. That went live in 2 grades Monday morning, and I had email after email after email. People were very happy with that. And that just started with an informal conversation that I said, yeah, let's see what it looks like. Communication was a big deal for us to date, emails, newsletters, videos. That was a big stretch for me. I put 4 videos out there. I think the most important ones were the 2 that showed parents how to navigate our distance learning plan and then showed kids. Those 2 alone had over 1,000 views. So that was a big deal, I think. Lots of, newsletters, which were more glorified, emails that went home on Friday nights, really pushing families to ask about things that they were concerned about and send emails and include us, right? And lots of parent emails. I think that's a good thing that came of it. A lot more connection with our families. I had the opportunity to do some deliveries of technology, and I know some of my teachers kind of did too, and that was just to help out as much as we could to a very overloaded technology department. I think if you read one of my bulletins, I scared a child to death, but it was a good experience. And the last big thing that we kind of worked out is cleaning out our building again. And as Brenda said, the paras and the secretarial staff just worked very, very hard to make sure that, number one, teachers had resources that they need to provide really quality lessons, materials that students needed in their hands. Band instruments was a huge deal. Textbooks that they needed, binders, their science binders, their math journals, their, all of the things that they had a lot of work into already that that was kind of coming to completion, right? This year-long, bundle of information that they put in these notebooks in order to be able to say, well, this is what I've learned this year, and kind of stepping into reviewing some of that for the MCAs too. So we made sure we got those. Our academic lockers, cleaning out lockers in the middle school is a very important thing. Yeah, and I don't even think about how much food they pulled out of those lockers. And we have Phi-Ed lockers left. That's a little bit more complicated because those have personal locks on them, and short of cutting them off, we're trying to get in there and use the locker, the informal locker combination list that one of the Phi-Ed teachers has. That's going to be a really other not enjoyable experience, I believe. Our staff is meeting every week, which is odd for them. They said, nope, we would like to meet. And part of it is to see each other, see their faces, right? That need to connect. That's the other big thing is I'm not a believer in online education. I know it's great for some kids, but I know the power of human connection for these kids. And that is what's missing for them now. And that's what I keep hearing over and over and over. I actually took the morning and drove around some neighborhoods this morning, lots of neighborhoods this morning. And there are no kids out, like none, not outside. I'm glad they're not out in groups, but they're not out at all. And as much as I'd love to think that they're working super hard on their distance learning stuff, I'm worried that other things are happening as well, like Xbox and things like that. So I just needed, everything's about data. This opportunity is so tremendous in terms of being able to gather data, right? So I wanted to know how long my teachers were working. I want to know everything there is to know, because this is all going to be really important after this situation is over. Moving forward, I already have staff expanding their office hours. They wanted a morning and 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon. Now they're saying that's not enough. They're having special math science office hours. They're having, combined language arts and social studies office hours. They're doing it at different times to help different kids with their individual schedules. And I think that is going to turn into teachers holding classes with their, and kids saying, okay, my math teacher's on at 10. I need to be there at 10 to hear what my math teacher has to say. I think another thing moving forward is we're going to continue working very hard to take care of kids. The very first thing we did in all of this was that every teacher made a list of kids that they're worried about for whatever reason. Could be technology, could be poverty, could be home life, it could be whatever, but every kid that I'm concerned about went on a list. And every teacher in the building did that. Was the first thing that we did. And again, great data. And then we look at that list and compare it to the technology list. We look at that list and compare it to all these other lists that we're creating about these kids. And now that list is being assigned to Stephanie Sealer, who is our behavior specialist. And it has turned into a list of who are we hearing from, who are we not hearing from, how much are we hearing from them. And she is now contacting and playing mother hen to kids that we're not hearing from. And because she has she has a established relationship with a lot of those kids anyway. And so she's got herself a Google number and she's calling and calling and calling, and that's going to be a regular rotation. Then let's see my list. We started up our I-Team meetings again last week, and that's the meeting where we talk about kids who are in need of intervention. As I'm sure you can understand, our intervention list exploded, right? If we're not seeing a child, now that child's on our intervention list, where previously they may not have been. And so we meet for an hour or as long as we need to once a week to, again, track kids, make sure all those Maslow levels are in place for them. Are they getting the food they need? Are they in a place that they're safe? Are they, just to make sure, then we worry about the educational piece. The last thing, and then fine tune the academics, right? Is what we're putting out difficult enough without being too difficult? The length of it, we're averaging about 20 minutes per subject per kid per day, if that makes sense. And so that's what we're kind of playing out. I haven't gotten any really bad feedback about that. I haven't really gotten a ton of feedback about that in general. Same thing with attendance and grading. The middle school will be going to a pass-fail model, except we're going to call it pass incomplete, because we want kids to be able to, if they don't get the work done at the end of the school year, to continue that through the summer. And there's a targeted services connection there. That's a really smart thing to do, but I'll let somebody else who's involved with that talk about that. The attendance piece and the grading piece, the nice thing about that is it really depends upon the building to decide how to use that information. And so we can say, yep, we're going to have you take attendance this way. And if we have a kid that's missing, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go after them for truancy. It means, okay, again, that's information we need to be able to connect with that kid. The school gets the discretion of dealing with that. And the same thing with grading. We don't have to worry about transcripts again at the middle school. We don't have to worry about that stuff. I'm working on a letter that's going home to families to explain how we're grading. Basically, when students turn a work in that's an assessment type of work, it's going to be on a 4-point scale, over and above, right? You turn something in, absolutely you understand the standard. You turn something in, you have partial understanding of the standard. You have turned something in, not really any understanding, or no evidence, or not enough evidence. And so, which would trigger the incomplete if there's enough of those, right? So that's the rough plan moving forward. Communication, I probably have to do another video or two coming up. One of the ones I have to do, I think, is to deal with the separation that kids have without any kind of closure. I really worry about the students not understanding what's happening in their partially constructed middle school adolescent brains. And so I'm going to have to do something that talks about their lockers being cleaned out, and that talks about how that looks and what that means. But it's been a really hard thing to write. So, but that's the top of my list for that. And then the next big thing is scheduling for next year. And I defy anyone to come up with something harder than beginning band to schedule online, because kids are supposed to be able to test instruments, and we haven't figured out a way around that yet. Although Schmidt Music is figuring some kind of, I don't know, video or something. It's going to be fun. Our middle schoolers, in my tongue-in-cheek way, I will tell you we're going to miss out on smells and Love is in the Air and all the wonderful middle school things in the spring. But they'll also miss their sports and their connections and the things that they have planned. I get that. Yeah, so that's the middle school.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have a question?
I'm gonna.
Kevin? Yep.
Yeah, Paul, you can get ready too. I also want to know, what are the positives that you're experiencing that you weren't anticipating?
Again, I think it's really the power of human connection. I think it's a about teachers and other educators being able to connect and how important that is, because my staff is really working hard to do that. So I don't think it's new learning. I think it's reinforcing things that that we already know that's best practice.
Thank you. Any other, so important, any other questions or comments? I see Beth wrote a comment that she appreciated how you tied the incomplete to targeted services. Like, awesome. So I'll just read that comment. Great.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the update. It's, again, a lot. And it's, as we're seeing, every grade level is so different as to the unique needs of those students and the parents, and, you know, really wrapping our arms around that whole child and whole family experience. So thanks for the update tonight. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate all the work that your staff and team is doing. So thank you. Yeah. All right. Next up is our high school principals report, and I'll call on Mr. Menard.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, that's an affirmative. Got it. Thank you. I'll start by reciting a quote from one of our teachers. When I kind of asked how things were going after week one, he reminded me that from a high school perspective, we're living in the students' world, and we need to continually get their feedback. We need to learn from them and adapt our way of teaching to their way of learning. So they're probably more familiar and comfortable with the technology than most of our teachers, than most of their parents. And so we need to harness that confidence and lead them to the finish line successfully. So very quickly, we've become really eager learners in this virtual environment. And we've really leaned on each other for a lot of different things. And that's been really neat to see our staff come together, both in and outside of the building, to help meet the needs of our families in the district, and also any sort of needs that one another have based upon all of our different strengths and all of our different comfort levels with various things. I want to start by saying that the feeling that I got when I re-entered the building on March 30th to work from the office felt kind of like a moon landing almost. We had probably 4 of us that weren't able to get in the building because the way that the building was shut down was, well, they did a really good job. And so we called on Jim Lure to let us in the building, and we got into the office. We had some paraprofessionals just kind of getting their feet underneath them, and we just weren't sure, you know, what was the status of the building? What's the status of our families? We had done this 2 weeks of planning, and now what? Now it's supposed to go live, and how's that going? And how do we know who has access to the online materials on Google and who doesn't? And bit by bit, we kind of exercised a lot of patience and a lot of understanding. We learned how to ask questions in a way that were going to get us the answers that we needed at that time, and how to redirect questions if they could wait. And so it was really just kind of building this new ecology in a time of distance learning, and certainly got to know a lot of my colleagues that I spent 6 weeks face-to-face with in a whole new dimension, and got to know them intimately in the building as we were dealing with phone calls and getting various things from people's lockers and classrooms, and, you know, trying to find things where somebody thought they were located on the 16th of March, but were a little bit off, and really just trying to be of service to everyone that needed it in a time of great uncertainty for many, many reasons. So on a serious note, I do want to thank all the people working on our buildings and grounds and our custodians. I've heard reports from other districts that had teachers entering the building and working and, for lack of a better term, treating it a lot more casually. I want to say that we treated the shutdown as seriously as we could. We have a list of people that are allowed in the building, and those are the only people that are allowed in. We're wearing masks and gloves when we're in common areas. And I think that limited access, at least at the high school, has allowed us the peace of mind in knowing that if we do return in early May, that virus has very little chance to spread or survive. So we know our kids, our teachers, our parents and staff are going to be safe if we come back. And that's huge. Our main office has run what I call a command center, where we're taking requests from teachers, we're making copies, we're distributing it on the food and materials transportation buses to the various sites. We're getting some work back from students, and we're also pushing it back out to the teachers for grading. In those special cases where families had limited or no technology or network access, we at least wanted to get some curriculum in their hands during that first week or two. Now I would say that everybody has had the opportunity to voice their limited access and to reach out to get the materials they need, which has allowed our curriculum to move forward. In terms of the locker item pickup, we had our academic locker item pickup happening last week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was highly organized, very well done. Our paraprofessionals in the building did a great job bagging those out and sending them on their way to families. For athletic lockers, I would say right now we're waiting on the governor's terms and conditions, which may allow students to enter in small groups into our gym hallway, depending on what is said and depending on when we want to tackle those items, and of course what happens to the rest of our school year. So we need more information on that because of the nature of those locks. I would say on many different fronts we're stretching our comfort zone. The first time I was really stretched is when I realized that the most efficient way to take attendance was to allow 14 to 18-year-olds to do it themselves. And so that's what they're doing. They're logging into Infinite Campus and they're marking themselves present for the classes which they have checked in for the day, whether that's to get an assignment, to engage with a teacher, to turn something in. And really for our teachers, it's realizing that they really need concrete expectations of what they think a check-in means and what a teenager thinks a check-in means. And if there's any discrepancy there, we're reaching out to families and we're saying, I really don't see that you've engaged with the curriculum. And so then it's a discussion of why have you marked yourself present? And that's had some very fruitful conversations. It's also allowed us, from the student perspective of checking attendance, if a student hasn't checked attendance, they're also now placed on our students' concerns list, something that Dr. Anderson-Hume mentioned. We have a very similar system where if we haven't heard from the students, if they're not on our radar, we're reaching out. Is it a technology issue? Is it a mental health issue? Is it a safety concern that we have to have our SROs involved in? And so that gives us a lot more information on what we're dealing with. And we continue to update that list and refine it regularly with our I-team meetings, with teachers reaching out, or finally hearing from a student and letting them know we all care and we're glad that they reached out. That's been really, really helpful. Other ways that we're stretching our comfort zone is tracking that engagement through Google Classroom. So instead of seeing whether or not a student's paying attention in a classroom, we have to do that between screens and between internet connections. And so some teachers prefer a Google form, kind of like an entrance and exit ticket. Some teachers are asking students to sign up for some times to do a quick Google chat, video or chat room style. Some teachers are asking students to turn in assignments various times of the week and so forth, and more. Also very recently, it has allowed us to communicate with families and say that, we're given a lot more freedom with this virtual environment in terms of when things are due, a little bit more like a post-secondary atmosphere, but also we need to be helping families realize and students realize we're pushing material out for a week, and typically that's due at the end of the week. But if we give them a couple of extra days, that's not when we expect them to do a week full of learning in those extra couple of days. And so helping the students realize that they need a plan, helping the families realize they can ask the student to plan, and then also giving them some tools to plan, which I'll get to in a little bit. I think that one of the biggest things and the trickiest things from the high school perspective with respect to documentation is going to be the conversation around grading. From the beginning, I have said we're going to be an A through F school until somebody says we can't be. And most of that was surrounding the NCAA Division I, Division II athletics eligibility. The NCAA very recently, as recently as Friday, came out with some of the stipulations where they're going to hold harmless seniors that will immediately enter college in a Division I or Division II atmosphere this fall. We're still unclear about what that means about our current freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, and I don't want it to be a 4-year penalty for one pandemic that happened in the spring semester of 2020. So I want to know exactly what that means before we completely flip to a pass-fail model. And that is the prevailing wisdom of our entire athletic conference in terms of what principals are doing. But we're also talking about pass-fail to be considered in some rare circumstances. So that student who really struggles academically, maybe they have enough elective credits, and so can we just push their electives to a pass-fail? Or perhaps they are repeating a grade or are behind a grade in math. Can we just go full bore on those math courses? And so we've had a handful of students where we've talked to the parents, we've laid out explicitly what some of the pros and cons are of going pass-fail, and that they are electing to go pass-fail with some select courses in very, very limited cases. So we're doing that. We're certainly not averse to a conversation on pass-fail with individual families, but right now that's not going to be a sweeping decision until we know that it's not going to affect our students at the next level of education. I want to go back and talk about the staff reaction when we started here. I had one teacher who was kind of our Nostradamus, and he predicted that we'd be going virtual. And so he took and put all of his classes on sort of cobweb-covered Google Classrooms. And he said, I'm going to be prepared if we're going to do this. And wouldn't you know it, 3 weeks later, Governor Walz said we're going to do it. And so from that to completely shell-shocked when the announcement came, we had teachers scrambling, and the stories have been told already tonight, but they plowed through their spring break. They were committed to Google Classroom, and it was instantaneous and unanimous. Let's have this platform that's already available to us, one-stop shop for families as a basis for learning. And let's try to get everybody access as soon as we can. And we have committed to that message, and we've committed to that delivery. I kind of picture it as a commitment or a sudden declaration that you're going to remodel a room that's rarely used. And so we had some teachers that knew how to use Google Classroom. We had others that just knew what it was, but we're only using the Google Drive for file storage and everything in between. And what our teachers did is they helped each other, and they set egos aside and differences aside. And there are different pieces of Google Classroom that we're using to help each other, and different ways that our distance learning champions are helping to coach others up. And hey, I learned this tip, and they're not afraid to put in the chats of a meeting, Paul, did you know you could do this? Or you don't have to play YouTube on your cell phone. You can put it right in the Google Slides. And so we're all helping each other learn, and myself included. And it's been really healthy for the culture, I would say, in an odd way, because none of us are experts. So we're all helping each other learn. And to that point, optional meetings were and are still held for tech tips, for collaboration, for support, for collegiality, for human contact, 3 times a week. And they're consistently attended by 20 of 31 teachers at the high school. So they're all in. They remain connected to each other. They remain connected to our families, because they want to be the very best for the students that used to be in their seats and now are on their screens. Student and family reaction. Families have had, I'll call it, difficulty negotiating the work. And what I mean by that is teachers are professionally trained in handling the discussion of why certain aspects of school are important and how to get students to do that work. And parents obviously have a pre-established relationship and don't always have to have that conversation. And so it's created a lot of stressors at home. We know it. I know it. I, as a parent, am living it. And so what's happening in response is we're trying to create videos. We're trying to send messages to families to say, here are some ways that you can ask your student to be the champion of their own learning. So make them be the expert. They're the project manager, if you will. Have them log in. Here's some things they can show you. That's called a to-do list. It's called a Google assignment calendar. It's called an announcement stream. Ask them what these are and ask them to show you. Because if you don't know what questions to ask, you're not going to successfully complete that conversation in some cases. And for most students, we've learned that it's a way that they can show their parents that they've got it and that they're working through it. And for other parents, it's a way to genuinely connect and see what exactly is due, when is it due, so they can assist the student who either is struggling or reluctant to connect or engage in some way. I would say that some families prefer the 8 to 3 routine, while others are engaged in a more flexible model due to the parent still working, the flow of the household, or other matters. We continue to reemphasize the 1/4 rule, which is basically a quarter of online time is the equivalent to full face-to-face time. So about 15 minutes for every 50 to 60 minutes of instruction. That's what the research says in terms of making a student be at a screen and engage online. That doesn't mean 15 minutes of work necessarily. It's 15 minutes of being instructed or engaging in that Google Classroom threshold. And then you're working outside of that independently on a novel or a project or research or something. We're thankful to our staff's efforts. We're continuing to reach out to students and we're connecting with them. This has taught us or re-emphasized, and I'll get to this preemptively answering Kevin Campbell's question later, but the kids miss the teachers and the teachers miss the kids. And in high school, we're reluctant to say that both ways, but we're shouting it right now to each other. And that's been a beautiful thing. Here are some ways that we're doing that. We're giving daily updates early on. Now it's weekly updates to parents and families. I learned what TikTok is. I'm heavily involved. I don't know what the threshold for stardom is, but I'm sure I'm trending. And we have other teachers who are asking to play video games with students at certain times of day if the parent's okay with it and things like that, because they miss us and we miss them. So that's our way of doing it. Teachers are using office hours certainly to guide instruction, but also as what I would call like virtual study halls. It was really eye-opening for me when I asked in last week's staff meeting, how's your office hours going? And they're saying, you know, it's great. Some student might kind of hold court and filibuster for the whole hour, but it's because they need to, and they need a voice to bounce things off of other than mom or dad or younger sister or younger brother. And some students are logging on and not talking at all, but just knowing that they have the same virtual room that they're in and they're doing homework together. And just other bizarre things that you wouldn't necessarily expect are happening to create what I call a virtual school community. One of the other kind of unexpected perks is that some of our students who have struggled or have not played school well, as I call it, in traditional face-to-face settings, are thriving. And, you know, it's the ones that always say, why do we have to come to school at 8 o'clock? I learn better from, 11 to 7, things like that. And guess what? They're learning better from 11 to 7. And so we're realizing some of those things and some of the things that research have pointed out to be true in certain cases. So that's been interesting. Looking at the future of the high school, I say that it's an eye on everyone, but it's especially an eye on our seniors. This is a time to hold them up. I mentioned before, we're prepared and we're safe if we come back on April 4th or 5th or whatever it is. But if we don't, we have to really be thinking of the mental health of our seniors, kind of closing out their experience with some notoriety and recognition in a way that celebrates them, that they're okay with, but also that acknowledges, we know it's not the same, but we hope this is good for you. We canceled prom. Some students were reeling about that. Our virtual prom didn't prove to be as widely successful as I had hoped. But families are considering a community gathering this summer, obviously depending on state restrictions for gatherings. And the school would be willing to help facilitate communication, but we cannot coordinate that because when the school year ends, teachers are finished with their contracts and seniors are not under the rule of a high school anymore. And so that gets tricky, but we certainly serve as kind of a community hub to push out communication. Some of our end of the year ceremonies are considering virtual presentations. I'm talking a little bit about letting some folks in the high school auditorium to pre-record things and then have a slideshow kick in and out and things like that. We're really trying to make it special in this odd forum that they weren't expecting and didn't ask for. I think that the biggest question right now is graduation. Obviously, the line is we're hopeful for an in-person traditional graduation in the RCC, but we definitely have to entertain other possibilities. We're looking officially at 5 different plans right now and more in order to respond quickly to the restrictions that likely will come out, I would say, by the end of this week, I hope, on travel, social distancing, and gathering size toward the end of May. That will tell us how ours can look. Other schools in our athletic conference, one of them has already committed to a virtual graduation. One of them is asking parents, do you want to go virtual on the planned graduation date, or do you want to try for a live graduation later? And others are sending out a survey with several different options saying, here are our options. What do you want us to look into? I think it's premature to do that until we know exactly what the restrictions are. Because just because you want a live graduation August 1st doesn't mean you necessarily can have one. And so know that we are kind of thinking about all those options internally, and we just want to do something that's really going to make the seniors end on a positive note somehow. And so I'm committed to doing that and to learning what they think that is as we move forward once we understand what we can and can't do. So to wrap it up, and Kevin, you can still ask the question if you want, but some positives are kids are owning their learning. They really are. Some of the ones that sit back at kind of that sit and get, they can't do that, and they're not doing that. They're owning their learning. They're teaching their parents in some of the most successful models in various homes. They're saying, this is what I do. This is what I can handle. Here's how I struggle. And the parents are knowing how their kids learn right behind their shoulder. And that's really neat. They're also realizing they need their teachers. And so this is a way that, especially in the unique environment of a high school between a high schooler and a teacher, it's a way to say, I appreciate you now. I've always appreciated you. So let's appreciate one another together and get through this uncertainty together. And we're seeing that happening in a variety of different ways, always meeting the kids where they're at and having them teach us ways that are most meaningful and impactful to reaching them.
Thank you. Well, Kevin, he preemptively answered your question. So do you have a new question?
No, fine. I like the preemptive. I don't need to talk. That's good.
You said to be prepared.
You were. It was perfect. It was perfect. I'm just curious. You mentioned hopefully by the end of the week, are you guys, I know, Ron, this is probably a question for you too. I know for a while you've been watching governor's pieces. Are those continuing to happen? And you guys, as the administration, continue to watch those together? Or how does that piece work out?
So I'll speak for what I know. I know that there are daily updates from the state level. Doesn't always include education. We do get daily updates from the Minnesota School Principals Association that talk about if anything came out, what is it, or what sort of things do we need to be paying attention to? Here are some resources for a virtual graduation. And so there's a little bit of a networking there. The reason I said hopefully this Friday is I'm basing it off of our home district in Wisconsin called school a week before this coming Friday. And so if Governor Walz is following the same timeline, it would be this Friday, but I have no basis for claiming that except that's what happened in Wisconsin.
The only thing that I can add to that is I was actually thinking Wednesday because I've noticed over the past few weeks that Governor Walz has made significant policy updates, if you will, on a Wednesday. So I actually thought on a Wednesday. But I also agree with Mr. Menard that something's going to happen within the next week or so. He's not going to wait until, May 1st to make that call about what's going to happen on May 4th. So I too think it's going to be within the next week. that we'll get some sort of update, and what that looks like, we haven't been briefed.
Thank you. I'm just going to read Beth's comment that she wrote in. I love your gradual release of responsibility for students to handle attendance and classroom work themselves, and you have a safety net for those that need more support. So thank you for that.
Yep, we're trying to create an environment where all students succeed, regardless of their motivation and skill level. We want them to get the very best out of this experience that they can.
Thank you. Any other board member have any comments? I'm not seeing any or questions come through. Fantastic. Well, thank you. I'll express gratitude, and same thing. I mean, with each of the updates, you know, we're seeing different needs for parents, different needs for kids, different needs for faculty and staff and everybody in how we're wrapping our arms around the kids, you know, based on where they're at, right, in the process. And I really value what you said about, you know, that the kids are really teaching us the way here in many, many different ways, and finding ways to listen to them to meet their needs. And I just really appreciate that update and how your team is approaching that. So thank you.
Thanks.
All right, our next agenda item is the Director of Teaching and Learning report. So I will call up Mr. Keller.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me all right? All right. Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks to say the least. I want to go back to that last board meeting. It was a little bit smaller and a little more intimate, but I did appreciate the fact that I was given that support by the board and by Rhonda to kind of move forward with what we needed. I'll start by saying that I believe at this point we've been able to fulfill every request that's been asked for. And there hasn't been as much as I expected. What we've been able to do is lean on some of the tools that we already had in place, but really learn about them and understand how they work in a digital environment. A good example is all the textbooks that we do have. Most of them do come with a digital version that can be accessed, and our teachers have embraced that and asked for that, and we've been able to provide that for them for the most part. And where we couldn't find that information, we went out and found some new resources that we put into place. So if you start at the top of my agenda here, we've said that obviously all MCA and MTAS tests were canceled for the year, which really changes some of the data points that we're going to get over the summer, obviously. Some of the pieces that we'll lean on then would be like FAST testing, MAP testing, and you got to realize that we did miss out on our spring opportunities to do those tests also. So there are some options to do some of that testing at home, but it's not a real highly recommended process. If there's some individual cases where we do want to look at some students, we might go ahead with that, but that's not something that I'm going to recommend as a larger piece. ACT were canceled across the country, obviously, but they have already rescheduled some for as early as June. I'm a little leery of that myself, and so we've talked a little bit about a possible October option for our current juniors to kind of retake that test. I think it's as early as October 8th. I think there's 2 dates in October. So I've been working with the high school counseling department and Mr. Menard on possible updates for that. Regarding the curriculum and PD, this is really, you talk about, is this an evolution or a revolution? And I'll tell you, this is definitely a revolution. I mean, this was a 180 turn so fast, leaning on these digital resources that it was interesting. I've never had PD, so heavily embraced, 100% participation just through necessity. And we were able to kind of move a mountain. I don't have a better way to describe that. In 2 weeks, we went from, like we said, folks who have never looked at some of these digital tools to really diving in and becoming experts in some of those areas. And so what we talk about is these distance learning plans getting updated on a weekly basis, all the way through up to the high school, where they're leaning on Google Classroom to kind of update their plans on a regular basis. And so what I asked for regarding the plans was to kind of standardize and build our systems at first. What systems are we going to use? So what we landed on was Seesaw at the pre-K2 level. So that is a new product that some of the teachers were using, but they were using a free version that was very limited. We did go ahead and move that into a subscription-based product, which is the folks that have picked that up and are using it are getting a lot of use out of it. I've seen some of the initial reports already coming back, and it's pretty amazing. Just the data that we get out of that. And Bobby was talking about collecting data. And so this is obviously an opportunity for us to see what tools really are effective and what we want to push forward in the future. Then I asked the buildings to kind of work on our different digital skills. There's kind of three parts to these types of plans. Number one, you got to have kind of what you call a, for lack of a better term, a learning management system or a curriculum management system, which we said is Seesaw for our pre-K2, and then we leaned on Google Classroom for our 3 through 12th grade. So that's the first leg. The second leg is to lean on our digital tools, our digital curriculum, and then whatever digital curriculum we can turn it into the analog version for students who don't have digital access, and a little bit more lean on the analog versions of it at the pre-K2 level also. It's real difficult, I can tell you, with twin third grade daughters to do a lot of digital learning. And I do think we got to be cautious about how much time we do ask our kids to stay on their devices and as we move forward. And then the third thing I kind of ask people to do is to find something that's kind of unique to them, a tool that they like to use digitally and something that might be fun for them or that deals with their particular type of curriculum. So really 3 parts to that process. And I've really seen some individuals kind of gel together as we've moved along. The other aspect of this was, how do we engage our SPED students, and then how do we engage our EL students? And we've looked at a variety of methods of pushing that out, and I can talk a little bit more towards that in just a minute here. The other group that I've worked with closely is that Northwest Suburban Integration School District. We've talked a lot about EL. We've talked a lot about the achievement integration work and how we can use those budgets to help in this time right now. The state has been pretty good about letting us make some changes, propose some changes, and we've leaned on that a little bit to open up some new resources kind of as we moved along. Going back to it, okay, the Distance Learning Committee. So right away I set up the Distance Learning Committee. I asked for grade levels, at least at the elementary level, to have 1 person per grade level, and then all of the departments in the middle school and high school to have at least 1 person represent them. And we've had, in many cases, multiple people represent it. We weren't limited to 1 person per grade, but so we started the Distance Learning Committee almost immediately, and we started to bring a district-wide group together just to make sure that everybody had access to updates and have access to live questions with me, we'll get to Kevin Neff in just a minute here, but with Kevin Neff online, with Rhonda. Rhonda is on those meetings frequently. All 3 of the principals are there. Matthew jumps in occasionally, and what I think it's a great time for teachers just to ask questions. And just we're all there in one space. We do it at least 2 times a week. We started at 3 times a week. I try to do one asynchronously, but I really think the ability to ask questions, it just didn't go over as well. That live response was really kind of important. So we've gone back to twice a week. We meet to start the week off. It's one of the first meetings that we have during the week on a Monday, and it's one of the last meetings that we have too. I have it on Friday. So we kind of end the weekend as we're going into pushing out the distance learning plans. We have an opportunity to kind of circle around and make sure that we've got one last time to ask a question and make sure that we've got all those pieces in order. Like I said, we've updated a lot of new delivery systems and products. Going back to my notes here, I'm looking at Seesaw, Google Classroom. Another tool that we pushed out was Screencast-O-Matic. It's just a way for teachers to record themselves and their screen at the same time for asynchronous lessons that they can push out to kids. We've updated just about every digital resource. Our 6th through 8th math teachers have gone to almost a fully integrated online service, and then they're supporting the students without the that are struggling with the devices with, again, those analog tools as we kind of move forward. So those 6-8 math folks have really stepped up and did a lot of training to jump into that process very quickly, and it's really pretty impressive to what they've done. Digital text, we've gotten online text from McGraw-Hill, HMH, Hodder. We've used other tools like MobiMax. That's really gone up in use, obviously. Remind.com, and we've used leaned on Infinite Campus quite a bit too. And just the number of groups that we're in contact with, it's, you know, for lack of a better term here, misery loves company. And so I've had a lot of meetings with other districts and other curriculum coordinators that are in similar situations, but at the same time, when I listen to what they say, they're kind of asking us, how do we get it rolling? What are the techniques that you're using? And I think we've done as well as anybody I've seen around us. There are some districts that had an advantage with 1-to-1 across the district. That's a nice advantage to have in this situation. But as quickly as we could, we did roll out, and we'll let John talk about that in just a minute. But we got those pieces out. So I was pretty happy with the work that we've been able to pull off with a very, very lean group of administrators and teachers that have really stepped up. We call them our digital learning champions, and we've got a document sitting out there that we talk about distance learning tools, and we've got a champion named by many of those tools that if you've got a question, you can contact that person. They've stepped up and they've said, yes, I'll be that person that will answer the questions. And so again, the teachers have stepped up and kind of gone out there. So we've been working closely with MDE, the folks at Resources and Solutions. Those are both the curriculum coordinators and those district assessment coordinators. Those are two groups that I work with closely. Like I said before, Northwest Suburban. I've worked closely with the West Metro curriculum coordinators and the Regional Centers of Excellence and a group called MAG, which is the Minnesota Assessment Group. And like I said, from across the state, I also have a next door neighbor who is a technology integrationist in a big 1-to-1 district. So I've been leaning on him quite a bit too. It's interesting though to hear some of the big tools that weren't working in some of those bigger districts. So and we saw that early on. And one of the things that I think we did well is we did kind of standardize the use of this particular platform, Google Meet. And Google Meet has been pretty reliable throughout the process. We did say no to some other digital formats, at least for teachers. And I think we've been able to kind of standardize and use our limited resources and really say, no, we gotta stick with certain tools. So we just don't have the folks to service everything that we're asking for here. Speaking of which, I will say for the data and technology integrationist, Kevin has stepped up like nobody else. Seriously, this says I've leaned on him heavily to implement a lot of pieces. He has touched base with every grade level, every department, everything I've asked him to do, he's done exceptionally well, and we would be in a different position without him. He has been invaluable, and I would add to that list, Connie Luer has gone through and has done tremendous amounts of data work regarding student uploads, just kind of a lot of manual stuff that just needed to get done. And I asked her to do it, and I turn around and it's done. And so I've just really appreciated the work that they have done for us over the last couple of weeks. It's been incredible. So, Kevin, and if I can preemptively say what's been good about this, we have moved. Boy, I'll tell you, in 2 weeks, we did more PD for more people than you'll ever see in any other 2 weeks. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. And the learning continues, and it's not perfect, but it is. We're continually growing, and we're continually kind of plucking away at those distance learning plans, trying to make sure that they're all consistent, that they look the same across buildings, and going to what Bobby was saying before regarding the grading piece. I kind of asked for a little addition to what we were grading and to look at those incompletes as becoming the rosters to our targeted services programs for the summer. And so I've reached out to Right Tech. I'm still waiting to hear back from them about how we can we continue this format if necessary right through the summer. And what you need to do for the targeted services is obviously you have to have a reason for a student to be in there. Well, if we can show the reason is that they haven't completed what we've done for our distance learning program, we can continue right with that throughout the summer. That's at least what I'm hoping for. And so Ron and I have talked a lot about some alternatives to that, and what this might look like. Might be very similar to what we're in right now, if that's what's necessary. I hope we can come back and bring all the kids back into the building. That would be great. I'd love to see it. But I got to make two plans here. So we know how to do it one way, and now we're working on this second version of that particular plan. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at.
Great, thank you. Any board member questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. And I can't see everybody in my screen. Beth Praska just said, thank you for your report. So I'll read that. I am not seeing anybody else asking to speak. So I can only see certain views at a time on my screen. So sorry, it just takes me a minute. So I'll just express gratitude as well. I mean, again, where we were a month ago and where we are today, it's wow. And just even thinking back as to where we were at last fall when we were, or summer, when we were considering adding a data integration technology individual, to our staff, and kind of like, oh, what would it mean? We didn't know we were going to be in a global pandemic, needing to completely change our education. So I guess that was a good decision at that point in time to add that role for certain, based on everything that you're saying. So that's just, what a great update. So thank you so much. I know that everybody's been doing a lion's share work. The other thing that I just wanted to state out loud is, and I'd be curious to know, you made the Misery Loves Company reference, which it's like, we're all in this together, not just Rockford, but it's the entire education, right, team across the state. And so have you noticed that has been a positive, or has that changed your relationships with other DTLs across the state, or other, collaborative communities that you're part of? Has this brought those relationships differently?
Again, we're stretched like this too, so all these meetings are virtual. But what I've seen is the collaborative piece is tighter. Particularly, I would point out the West Metro folks that I work with. That's been a group that's kind of come together, and a lot of emails back and forth. Hey, how are you dealing with this issue, and what are we looking at for grading? The grading issue, I'll be quite honest with you, has been huge. A huge piece across the state. Really not a ton of guidance from MDE, and a lot of just kind of leave it up to the districts to figure it out. So that's what we're doing, and we're kind of trying to stay together regionally as much as possible. And I've had some really great conversations with some of those folks. I would add to that though, Amy, that the relationships even within the administrative team are very different now, and just how we kind of see who what skills people have. I mean, I've been asking questions of all of them all along, but this is really I meet with these guys a lot more frequently now than we ever did before. And every meeting now is this is every meeting. So you can't just walk out the door. If I want to, Paul's office is right next to mine, but if I want to talk to him, we gotta arrange this thing, and it's a lot of work. So it's interesting. It's a different way. If you're gonna meet somebody online, you're gonna get something done. So that's an important piece. Nice. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this update. Really appreciate it. It's amazing, again, what a month has brought us. The next update is yours too. And so it's the Achievement and Integration Plan approval, which is for the board. This is a briefing and an action item. So I will turn it over to Mr. Keller to present it to us. That's right. I would have presented this March, but we had a couple other things on our agenda, and so I did push it off till April. I did brief you about this earlier. I didn't give you any specific plans at that time. The one briefing that I gave you is that MDE will allow us to change and modify this plan up through April of 2021. And so what I gave you were my 3 initial goals that were pushed out there, but those goals are based on, and I have it on a different screen, so I don't have it in front of me, but I know what the goals are. The 3 goals are based on some of the work that we have to do at the high school regarding the implementation of IB, continuing to look at free reduced lunch and data provided through FAST, and the other goal, if you'll excuse me, I just got to click over here. Our goal number 2 deals with teacher. Yeah, I'm sorry, I do know what that is. Envoy training starting next fall. So those are 3 kind of goals that meet the criteria that MDE is looking for. It allows us to look at some of the similar but very different aspects of what the last A&I process looked like. So I would ask that you do take a look at this, knowing that part of what I wanted to do with this is, I know we were working through strategic planning. We had talked about that. So as that continues on through next year, we can revisit these A&I goals and make changes that whatever we want, all the way up, like I said, through April of 2021. And that might even be extended now, because that was the initial point. And everything that I'm dealing with now regarding plans and budgets and stuff, budgets aren't necessarily being pushed off, but the how we go about submitting that work has just changed a little bit, just based on our current needs. So I would ask that we can get this signed. All I got to do is send it in to I've already sent it into MDE. I just simply need the signatures at this point, and then it becomes official, and then we can make modifications as we see fit.
Perfect. Does anyone have any questions? Let me just pull up my chat function. Hold on. No, not there.
Brady looks like he had a question.
Brady, I'll call on you.
Yes. So I was looking over the document a bit, and I think it was goal number 2. What is Envoy training?
Yeah, Envoy. That's a good question. Envoy deals with it's a technique to engage students kind of non-verbally, and Bobby's gone through training regarding Envoy, but Envoy deals with it's kind of a classroom engagement technique that allows you to get past a lot of the barriers and let students kind of take charge of some of their behavior. I'd let Bobby talk to it a little bit more. She's more of the expert on it than I am, but it is something that I am familiar with from past employment, and I've had partial trainings. I haven't been fully trained as a teacher, but it's a piece of student engagement, and that fits exactly what we need for that integration piece. So I don't know if that helps, Brady. I apologize. I didn't really come forward with my Envoy training here. I could look it up for you real quick here, but Bobby and I have talked about it at length, and we've talked about it at our DAT meetings is one area that we would like to push forward. So,
Kevin, I might be able to help you. Can you point me to what page that is on the document? Because I'm certified.
On page 2.
Page 2 at the bottom.
Yeah. Envoy deals with cultural competency as our part of our district professional practices.
Yeah, and I can help Brady understand it behind the scenes. We don't need to take up every time. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the board? I can't see everybody all the time, so if you do want to raise your hand, just pop your name in the chat function, but I'm not seeing any right now.
Amy, I can help you with a Chrome extension on that someday here. We'll teach how to get everybody's face on there. So I got all that right here.
That would be fantastic, because with all the other people on the call, it's kind of changed my view right now. So it's hard to see everybody. So very good. I will take you up on that offer. So this is an action item. I would ask for a motion, and the district is asking that we approve the integration plan as written, understanding that it can be modified and changed up until April of 2021.
So Eric Gordy will make a motion to approve the A&I plan as presented by Kevin Keller.
Thank you, Eric. I have a first. Do I have a second?
This is Beth Praska. I'll second.
Thank you, Beth. So I have a first by Eric Gordy. I have a second by Beth Praska. Any further discussion or questions? All right. Otherwise, per board practice, this is a roll call vote. Brady Anderson.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Beth Praska.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. All right. And our next agenda item is our International Baccalaureate Program Administrator Report presented by Dr. Scheidler.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I have not seen the board for a little while. The February meeting, my wife was traveling when that was still a thing, and obviously everyone is grounded now. I just really want to thank everyone from every level, our school board, our superintendent, our administrative team, our teachers, our custodians, our clerical, our paraprofessionals, our tech team. I mean, everyone has bonded together and really worked collaboratively to change and to adapt. And to kind of preempt Kevin's question, the collaboration, it's what Kevin Keller talked about, but it has absolutely exploded at the school level. I can speak specifically with IB, how much, a lot of times it's really hard to get a hold of other coordinators. And now I can have in-depth and robust conversations with folks, and not just other MNIB coordinators, our Northwest Suburban consultant, Randy Cook, and both of our consultants. In fact, I have an hour conversation set aside tomorrow with our MYP consultant. So that has been just a great, great situation. And I also want to share one quote I heard from a teacher last week or the week before. And she said, I'm a veteran teacher, but right now I feel like a first-year teacher. And in a way, everyone's a first-year teacher. And you never have that in a school situation. So what an unprecedented opportunity for our folks to work together. I'd like to go through the board report and then certainly answer any questions you may have. I have 3 items. Item number 1, our MYP, DP, and CP application process. I'd like to give you an update. For all of the applications, I'm engaging staff both individually and in small groups in our new distance learning reality. We aren't able to have our IB advisory committee meetings face-to-face, obviously. So I'm really having tactical, targeted conversations with individuals and with small groups to move forward. I'm also collaborating, as I mentioned before, with our consultants, MNIB coordinators, our Northwest Suburban consultant, everyone to really get that input as we prepare our applications for authorization. Specifically, our MYP application, we have our consultant site visit. It's going to be a virtual site visit, May 18th and 19th. So that's coming up in about less than a month. And we have a lot of work to do to prepare for that. And that's what we've had our sleeves rolled up doing that work. And we'll continue that right up until our visit. The DP and CP application, we're utilizing the feedback we had from our consultant report from Rachel Moyer's visit in January. And like I mentioned earlier, talking to our various groups, our teachers, our admin, our staff to get the answers we need. Item number 2, our authorization timelines for MYP, DP, and CP. So for DP and CP, for Part A, just so everyone understands this, when we submit our application for authorization, actually for all of our applications, we'll give them 3 dates for the visit. And so we're looking at these dates. We want to get going as fast as possible early in the fall of 2020, because we'd like to get our responses for our authorization as early as possible. and then that will allow us to infuse, let's just say we are authorized in all three programs, MYP, DP, and CP, then we would have that time to include all of that material in our registration for that January or February of 2021 for that registration window. And then we would start DP and CP classes in the fall of 21, in the 21-22 school year. I just wanted to give everyone clarification on here's how this works. We give them 3 different dates in 3 different months. So we can't say we'd like to do October 7th, October 14th, and October 21st. They have to be in 3 different months. MYP authorization, our consultant has 30 days to file their report after we have our site visit. So if you spread that out, that would take to about June 18th or 19th. We want to complete our MYP application for authorization as soon as possible. And Nani is unbelievable. I can see her having her report done even before that 30 days is up. So we're going to shoot for as early as we can to get that MYP application complete. For DP and CP application for authorization, our target date is June 26th or earlier. We're obviously in a much different circumstance with this distance learning right now. We may be able to get those applications done earlier than June 26th, and we'll absolutely submit them as early as we can. My third point tonight is professional development. All face-to-face IB trainings have been canceled through June. And that impacted several. I mean, we had 7 or 8 people that were poised to go to Minneapolis this coming week for IB training. Obviously, that's not happening. Here's where it's just such a great indication or example of our staff's adaptability. And they're literally learning by doing. We have to go to online IB professional development. And I say have to, it's the only option right now, and it's really a great option. These are robust learning opportunities. I think we have to give hats off. Mr. Menard is scheduled for 3 of these coming up, and he's in one right now with MYP, I believe, is his current online IB. We have 6 teachers, 5 or 6 teachers doing it right now. In the next session, starting in early May, we have another 7 or 8 teachers. You really got to tip your cap to these teachers and administrators that are engaging in this type of learning. It's about 4 to 5 hours a week, in addition to that heavy lift of transitioning from face-to-face to distance learning. So as you can see, there's 3 different time frames: April 15th to mid-May, early May to early June, and late June to late July. We have folks registered for all 3 of those. And we even have some folks scheduled for August and into September. So we're doing everything we can to get our folks the support they need. And I will, that is my report. And if there's any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Are there any questions out there? I don't see any.
I've got a question. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know, like I should be putting it in chat or what, but
yeah, that helps me see because I can't always see everybody.
Sure.
Just,
yeah, because we move all over.
Yep. Thanks.
All right. I think we need a Kevin Keller overview on how to do this stuff here. So we use Zoom meetings, so this is a little bit unfamiliar, but anyway. So Matthew, thank you for the update. It looks like generally the dates here haven't really shifted out too much, or it doesn't seem like they've been dramatically or grossly impacted. What I want to do is just get a gut check from you as to whether that's accurate or inaccurate in terms of like our timelining for implementing IB overall, our budget for implementing IB overall. How has this pandemic impacted specifically time, budget, their schedule and budget for our implementation efforts?
Brady, great questions. And I'll start with the budget piece because that is significant. We're actually, we were targeting about a 10%, we were supposed to be within 10% variance of our spending. We were supposed to spend it down to only having 10% carryover. That has been relaxed for this fiscal year. The federal government absolutely understands that every school district is facing this unprecedented situation. And I'll give one specific example of finances as it pertains to professional development. When we send someone to a training, there's hotel costs, plane costs, meal costs, curriculum hours, if it's a summer or a weekend day or a non-school day. All that adds up into the $2,000 to $3,000 range, plus the registration for the workshop. When we do an online workshop, it's $450. So we're talking dramatically lower costs. And obviously, when we set our budget, we were planning on the face-to-face. And I want to go back to something Bobby was talking about of how valuable that learning environment is face-to-face for our students and our teachers. I really believe the same thing stands for adult learning. And I think you could talk to all of our teachers and administrators, our counselor. We've gone to IB trainings, and we've really had a chance to engage other administrators, other teachers, other IB leaders from around the world. We can't do that right now. So to answer the finances question, we are able, whatever funds we don't spend this year will be carried over. We just have to explain why. And I find no issue at all with that. To give another specific example, Brady, we're looking at curricular materials. Well, obviously, we're not in the same face-to-face environment we were. Our teachers are completely engaged in different tasks in their teaching and learning environments. So they might not have that time to look at 3 or 4 different textbook copies or review copies. So that might be pushed out into the summer or into next year, whereas it might have even happened this spring. So did that answer your financial question? Just want to make sure.
I think that's very helpful. Yes, that's helpful. Sorry, my internet kind of cuts in and out sometimes here. So
right, no, that's why I had to go no video, because my connection has been spotty. So then the other question you had is the dates. I will be honest, the MYP, especially this MYP authorization timeline, let's keep this in perspective. We had our first official MYP kickoff during workshop week. And our 9th grade teachers, and to an extent 10th grade teachers, started to roll out MYP units this year in a blended environment. Just really, really unbelievable work by our teachers. And I want to extend that to our students for their flexibility. It is not easy to live in different worlds, and different teachers rolled out things at different times and different paces, and that's just human nature. So I really, our students, they're the trailblazers, these 9th graders. It's just an unbelievable effort by them this school year. And let's face it, they'll be the trailblazers all 4 years, because if we meet our timelines, they'll be the first of everything. And I would say in my conversations with them, they're maybe not that excited about being first in everything, but we're really, really grateful for their engagement through this process and their honest feedback. I mean, that helps us get better, and that's all of our goals. I think you asked, Brady, was these timelines. We have a very tight timeline for MYP, and I just received a 55-page PDF for what has to happen for a remote or a virtual visit. I looked at the reasons for why a virtual visit could happen. Pandemics was one. Warfare was another. I mean, we're talking about extreme situations for people to go remote, and that's where we're at. We're going to try to do everything we can to meet that timeline. I will say this. We are able to offer MYP programming even if we're not authorized. It's a 1 to 3 year candidacy phase. And as our consultant said to me, Matthew, you're asking to have your site visit and you haven't even been MYP for a year yet. And so she's just really astonished at our pace, and that we really are pushing forward. We are being aggressive. I will continue to talk with our administrative team and our teacher team, and I am really doing my best to be as brief as possible in my communications and not to overwhelm teachers with asking too much of them. I'm really being tactical in what I'm asking of them at this point as we plan for really all three authorizations for application. I should say applications for authorization.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the board? I don't see anybody raising their hand in the chat function. Nope, and I see heads. So Matthew, I just will say I'm really happy to hear how the federal government is looking at the variance from a budget perspective. It's great that we will be able to carry over the budget and not have to spend it down, especially when there's different opportunities to do so. So we'll look forward to, kind of learning more as we reconcile this year's budget as to how we're going to reinvest those grant dollars, since the training is coming at a different cost and those sort of things. Nothing I need to know tonight. Just, again, I'm really happy to hear that the federal government is allowing us to carry those dollars over and not lose them. So that's a great update all the way around. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Amy and board. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Hopefully we'll see you next time. All right.
Right.
Yes. So next, we are moving on to our facilities impact with the COVID-19 pandemic. So I will ask our Director of Buildings and Grounds to come forward virtually, Mr. Luer.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you and see you. You're on. Thank you.
Good evening, board. Thanks for having me on. Out of everybody on this virtual conversation, the only people that probably won't like me is the board, because I'm the guy that locked everybody out when this whole thing started. But my goal as the Director of Buildings and Grounds and Facilities is to keep our staff, students, and community safe, virus-free, healthy, and having conversations with Superintendent Dean early on. This is the direction we chose. And so it meant locking everybody out and keeping everybody safe. So I laughed at when Paul said that he and his support staff couldn't get in Monday morning because I did that on purpose. No, not really. I love you, Paul. But my goal is to keep everybody safe. And the conversation we had, Miss Dean and I, was how are we going to do that? And basically it is lock down the facilities and grant only certain amount of people in. And at that time, the governor said we have to have childcare. So I have to figure out how I can grant the childcare Galaxy people in during that first week. And then my other goal is, in a roundabout way, is to keep, when we staff the offices, as safe, clean, and healthy as possible, because those are our frontline people. And if for some reason we do go back to school May 4th, we need to have that front office staff and principals healthy. And so they were going to be in the front line of this educational process. So it was lock down the offices and nobody has access. And so that was another process we took. So the bullet number one is lock down the buildings, deactivate card access. Nobody has keys to the outside buildings. We also locked down our facilities outside. We put on different locks on our stadium so coaches couldn't get in the stadium to start up practices or get on there to play, or kids couldn't congregate on the fields the best we could. So we changed the locks. So that was all secured. The second thing was I got a call. I remember it was a Friday night before we started food distribution on Monday from Miss Dean about 6 o'clock on a Friday night and said, hey, I just thought of something. We need to have sanitizing, PPE, gloves, masks for all the food distribution people. And it's like, okay, as we all know, there's not a bottle of sanitizer within 1,000 miles of here. So I had to come up with an idea quickly, and we actually went to the store, to Home Depot, picked up some stuff, spent the weekend building some things, went to school at 2 o'clock in the morning to get some hand sanitizer stations, and had them ready to go Monday morning. That's what we just do. And I just remember that conversation from Miss Dean's like, really? Friday night before we do food distribution? So we just do it. The thing that we needed to do is get the proper PPE. Proper PPE is personal protection equipment, and that consists of gloves, masks, and disinfectant or hand sanitizers. The best practice is to wash your hands, but we also needed to get it to our Galaxy people. We needed to get it to our front office staff. We needed to get it to our food distribution people. And then we need to get it to our paras. And so once this thing hit the news that we were going to possibly start shutting down, a shout out to Paula, because Sarah was on vacation. I put an order into our chemical company and she cut me a PO really quick. And we got ahead of the game on all this disinfectant stuff. And we got an order of gloves, and we got some orders of actually TP. And so we were getting supplied with stuff. The only thing we couldn't get our hands on was masks. But lo and behold, we had a few boxes of masks that we kept in my office just for incidents of some type of flu or something like that. So we had enough masks to start, and we got those passed out. All the food distribution sites were set. All the Galaxy people were set. All the office people were set with masks and stuff. And they were actually N95 masks, so they were pretty good masks. As we went down the road, we started running short on masks because I only had so many. And one of the previous teachers we had reached out to one of my custodial staff and said, hey, you might want to check in one of the classrooms, because at one point we might have a box or two of more masks. So one of the staff went in there, checked it out, and we found some more masks, which really helped out. But with the rotation of staff in and out, office staff in and out, Galaxy staff in and out, and food distribution, we started going through masks. And so I put out an email to our crisis team and just said, we're running low on a couple things. And obviously we can't get them from our chemical supplier, because I've talked to them several times, and as if the chemical supplier supplies to a hospital or a healthcare place, they're a tier 1. We are considered tier 2. So anything disinfectant, gloves, masks, anything to do with that type of thing for hospitals, they get it first. we get it second. And so right now we're getting close to running out of some gloves. We're still good based on how long this is going to continue and food and stuff. But supposedly the chemical people said they've got 4 pallets that are supposed to come tomorrow. And based on what the healthcare needs, we should be getting some back orders. So we should be good on gloves. Masks, we're getting down there. And so, and I got a visual for you. And this is why I love Rockford so much, is because this community, these businesses, these parents just step up. And I remember getting a email from Jessica Peters that somebody donated and made a bunch of cloth masks for Galaxy so she could give back some of their masks that they had. But I got a text message from Jamie Madsen on last Friday, I think it was Thursday, that the company 25-2, Eric and Kim, they're the ones that make them crop crates at the middle school. He connected me with those two up there at 25-2, and I'm going to show you, they started making, I don't know if you can see this or not, they started making these masks, and I just picked these up today. I talked to Eric, and if you can see, they actually put the Rockford logo on the side. And what it does is they made these out of a 3D printer. They have this little pouch that comes out that's changeable, can be wiped down with isopropyl, and in this little pouch is this fabric that is actually N95 fabric that they have connections on getting. Don't ask me how. And then they have a parent that Nikki Casado is sewing these, and they come in different styles. They come in green, they got flowers, they got any kind of fabric she can find, but they come in white and they come in green. So I ordered a dozen from him, picked them up from them, and I picked them up today. And she sews these little patches. They put this in here. You can wear this for a couple days. You wash this, and then you put another piece in this. I was appalled, which is the wrong word, but set back by what they are doing. They made them for the Medina Police Department. They made them for the Rockford Fire Department. They made them for the Corcoran Police Department, and they're making them for more first responders. They're looking at making them more for the medical field. They're reaching out to local hospitals. They actually told me today when I was in there picking these up that they bought 3 more 3D printers to make more masks and they're giving them away. They're donating them. And so a shout out to that group and to Nikki for sewing them. I mean, she had a bag full of these little filters sewn up, looking for different kinds of patterns, and just making this process and understanding and just helping out Rockford schools because they love it. Standing there talking to them, and you guys talk about distance learning. I can tell you, Nikki, as a parent, made the comment that she is just excited of how the teaching staff has stepped up and taken this on and made this work so easy, and her kids are enjoying it. And she was very passionate about the thank yous and how well Rockford Schools is performing, and she don't even know who I am. So that was very nice to hear, and I thought I would pass that on. January of 2018, take you back a few winters, they started coming out with a electrostatic disinfecting machine. I call it it's actually looks like a Star Wars gun. And what you do is it electrostatics disinfects touch points. It will wrap around anything that you spray it with. And for some reason, at first I thought it was a gimmick, but then I did some more research. I talked to Becca Morgan, our nurse, district nurse, and talked to her about it a little bit. And we talked about what it can do if, say, we had like an outbreak of flu in the elementary or something going on in one of the schools, that we can go in and disinfect a complete room in about 4 to 6 minutes without standing there and wiping everything down. This will actually do a better job of electrostatic clinging to things. We can go mist over the top of keyboards, stay away from screens and stuff because they don't know how that would affect it. But that spring of 18, we had some type of a flu outbreak a little bit in a couple grades at the elementary, and Brenda, our custodian, went in on a Sunday before Monday school, and she disinfected about 12 rooms in less than probably about 35 minutes completely. One of the things we used it for is we did all the main offices before all the staff returned. We did touch points, flat surfaces, copy machines, anything you can put your hands on, we touched. The one thing we did learn now the next day, and Corey Meadows, one of my custodial staff members, and myself went in on a Sunday and did all the offices Sunday afternoon for Monday morning, and we came to work on Monday and went into the offices and realized that we really shouldn't spray the papers because they were kind of curled up into a ball. So we had to stay away from papers. But what I'm trying to say with the electrostatic gun is, and I don't call it a gun anymore because of schools. I call it the magic machine. But we bought it in January of 18 with that aspect. When I went to order one with this epidemic coming out at that time frame, they were already back ordered to May. You couldn't find one anywhere. And I had a couple of other salesmen and schools call me if I wanted to sell it for like $4,000 or $5,000, and we paid $695 for it. And I said, nope, we're not doing it. So currently that magic machine is getting used every night in Galaxy. When Galaxy's done, we clean it. It's not used to be used as a complete cleaner. It is a disinfecting machine. Excuse me. It's not used to just not clean. It has to be done afterwards. They've came out with multiple approved disinfectants now that we have our hands on, that we can put in this machine, and we will use maybe a third or less of disinfectant that we would use based on going into a classroom and wiping it down and trying to disinfect it by hand. It just saves so much time and does such a great job. Currently, we just started today, our night staff, and we only have one, so they have to be a little careful because they run for about 4 hours on a battery. But I have them starting at the elementary, and when the paras cleaned out all the lockers, I asked them to leave the doors open so Now they're going through and disinfecting the insides. And when they get the doors somewhat closed, they'll go back and disinfect the outside of the lockers. And we're doing that only in case we have school on May 4th. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it, but we have to be prepared. We have to be ready one way or the other. Couple other things, custodial staff, unreal. When I got here, I was here 3 weeks to a month, and I flat out told them, in the 25 years of working in facilities and working with other people and other custodial staff and co-workers and everything else, I've never worked with more of a dedicated staff than we have at Rockford. And at that time, we were still down one person. And to this day, it's the best custodial staff that I've ever worked with. And I would put them up against any large school district, any small school district. If we needed to get something done, they're going to do it. No questions asked. I had, when this thing took place, I had some meetings. We set up a go-to meeting, which surprisingly they all came to, whether it was on a phone or not. And I just said, our roles are going to change. I don't know what we're going to be doing. It's going to change hourly. It's going to change weekly. It's going to change by the minute. We don't know. This is stuff that nobody else, if somebody in facilities as a director or custodian or supervisor says, I know what we should do to kill it, they have no idea. Because the professionals don't even know what chemicals actually kill it. They have a good idea because the chemicals that we use fall under the norovirus, which is a family, they feel, of the coronavirus, but it hasn't been out long enough to test to make sure it kills it. They're getting closer with that stuff, but I reach out to my constituents all the time, and same page. This is what we're doing. We're trying this. We're doing this. We're hoping it works. But there's no way to test it. If we were to disinfect something, no way to test it. And if there was, it would be probably really expensive. So with all that said, my goal is, right now we are planning for May 4th. That's our plan. What that looks like. And again, I did listen to the governor speak today, and the question was asked by one of the reporters about if we're going to have school or not. And he's on the fence, obviously, but reading between the lines, he's having a tough time with it because I think because of his past being a teacher and a coach, that he said, he's feeling for the seniors. And I think he feels for the seniors, the teachers, how this is going to end, and if he was to call school, of how it's going to hurt things, but yet he also wants to save lives. So, but I'm with Paul and I'm with Rhonda a little bit. I think it's going to be this week, one way or the other. But we're planning for the 4th, and we will go. If it's the 4th, then we go all hands on deck, and we get everything ready and disinfected like the first day of school. Get lockers cleaned out, get things back in place, get fields ready, get all that stuff going. If it isn't, then we switch gears again. And then we look at, okay, now what do we do? We're not going to have school the rest of the year. What can we get accomplished being out of school a month and a half early? Well, we can start summer cleaning, and we can do a really good job of a better job of summer cleaning with the staff we have. We can get some contractors in there and start early. We can do some things to the fields that we've never really had an opportunity to do because they get used so frequently, especially our grass fields, based on what's going to take place over the summer, whether they're having summer events, raw events. nobody has the crystal ball to look into and say, this is what's going to be taking place June 15th, August 15th. It's what are we doing tomorrow? And when I talk to this custodial staff, I switch them up, or I text them hourly, daily, nightly, and it's okay, got it, I'll take care of it. And I have staff that didn't do grounds now. I have staff working with food distribution and helping load buses, getting ice, getting them loaded, helping them get unloaded, help taw her, all willing to do anything. Running in between buildings to get things cleaned, make sure the stuff is stocked for the PPE for all the buildings. The one thing I did tell them, they are not allowed to go in the offices, because the offices to me are like a surgery zone, off limits. And for that reason, the staff were in the buildings want to be safe too. So they're off limits. They can go in at night to clean restrooms and stuff. But then a lot of times we use the magic machine and disinfect it. And then so we're prepared for both, whether it's school on or school off.
Wonderful.
The last thing I would like to say is there's a very good collaboration and support with Miss Dean for facilities. It's nice to work with somebody that has an understanding about facilities, of how important they are. And then just a last shout out for a couple of people, some of the people is my custodial staff. They're wonderful. Principals, great to work with. You ask them something, they ask you something, great guidance. Galaxy people, it's just a great place to work. Sarah Pepin, I asked for a PO to get some supplies in here, and she has it to me within minutes, 5 minutes at the most, and I can get that stuff just at the drop of the hat. So in a roundabout way, I think we're safe, we're organized, I feel comfortable about it. I don't know much about the virus, but nobody else does either. But I think we're ahead of the game at Rockford, because on the crisis planning committee, we already started in case we had something. And so we're ahead of it.
Jim, thank you so much for this update. It was really thorough and a lot of detail. So thank you so much for doing that. I'm just going to quick ask my colleagues if they have any questions. I didn't see any in the chat function. I just saw some comments. Just that really cool community partnership with the masks and everything. So that's pretty impressive. And I'll just add one thing. I mean, you made a comment about, gosh, the Friday night before going into food distribution, we changed course and thought, oh my gosh, we need these things. And that's the reality that we're living in, right? And we need to be nimble and flexible. And as we think about more things that come up, that's our reality, because there isn't a playbook for how to respond to this. And it's just natural that we're going to think about one more thing that's going to make us a little bit safer, or one more thing that's going to be a little bit better in all aspects of our operations. So I'll just express gratitude to you and the team for all of the work that you've done, and the crew that you represent, and just a really nice update. Thank you so very much. Wonderful. Thank you. Next, I will call on, our next subject is the technology impact with the COVID-19 pandemic. And that is by our Director of Technology. I will call on Mr. Engel.
Hello. I have probably the worst internet with a DSL line. Maybe that's what you have too, Brady, but I have tried to do so many of these online with video that it never works. So I'm just going to stay as just a blinking blob or whatever. So first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. Want to say hi to everybody. I'm also going to post on there. I think I'm going to go a little bit off of what I said in my agenda, but I wanted to share kind of as the underlying, I'm going to share my calendar to give you an idea of how it went for us in the technology department. I think that's the easiest way to do. So if that's okay, are you guys seeing that? I believe so. Okay. I can't see it. Just a second. Sorry. There we go. So basically, we kind of know when it all started. The light green was kind of the first 2 days where we were just basically supporting everybody that had to leave the buildings, the teachers, etc., providing tech support where needed to assist staff to accomplish that. We also called on grabbing all of the Chromebook carts in each of the building and bringing them into a centralized location so that they could be secure for the upcoming distribution that we had planned. Obviously, the kind of pinkish color, 18th through the 29th, is when the buildings were closed. So myself and staff pretty much spent our time doing planning. On the 18th, I was able to, on the 19th, I was able to go live with the online survey to gather information from all of our families, whether they had devices, whether they had internet access, etc. On the 20th, I was able to mail out, with the help of Paula Juanis, she printed up some labels for me, brought home a printer, and we had pre-printed stamped envelopes and return envelopes, and we sent out about 200 hard copies of those surveys. Pretty much spent the next week kind of dealing with research of the things that we had to do to get the whole distribution in place, and I drove up to the post office in Rockford every day and picked up the returned surveys, and also picked up the district office mail, which I then delivered when we obviously went back to the building on the 30th. A big thing that we were really looking at is, what do we do with folks that don't have access? We were all seeing things where the providers were going to offer these free or reduced services, but my staff reached out to many of the companies that provide those services in the area, and they really didn't offer anything free, that's for sure, except for maybe some add-ons to your data plan that you already had in place. So I was starting to get nervous, and I think it was the first meeting was on the 19th with, or was that I believe it was the 19th. We met with our partner, also 25-2 in town, and they offered to help us out with not only data, but they asked about what else we needed. They were concerned, do we have enough devices? And we did. But what we didn't have is the access problem solved. So we started brainstorming, and they came up with something that we were going to call the community network, where we would have exterior Wi-Fi transmitters and repeaters that would spread through some of our high density areas, providing Wi-Fi to those folks that didn't have it. So they started working on that, and they also reached out and started buying hotspots, which was really a smart thing to do because, as we all know, those became quite the commodity as we went further into this pandemic. Finalized the agreement with them to move forward on the next day, on the 20th. And as I said before, we spent the next week kind of doing more planning, etc. Met with them in person to finalize some of our plans. Once the building opened, we were able to get, my staff and I were able to get back in the building, and on the 30th, and we began sanitizing the Chromebooks. Some had been cleaned, but we wanted to make sure they were all cleaned, and we had to kind of dismember the Chromebook carts, and that entails taking all of the power supplies out, et cetera, and winding those up, cleaning, wiping down, et cetera, et cetera. On the First and second, those were the first days out with some of that equipment I was talking about for the community Wi-Fi, and we targeted the Maple Hills area. However, the specs for the equipment did not, or I should say that the equipment didn't live up to the specifications that they had listed. It was supposed to go for 300 meters, and it ended up being only about a 200-foot reliable signal. So that plan kind of fell apart. They did put one unit in the Hope Center, which is up at Maple Hills. And on the 3rd, we were able to finalize our configuration of the devices to match that Wi-Fi network we were hoping to build, as well as finalize our SIPA compliant web filtering for off-site use of our district devices. We wanted to make sure our kids were still compliant with that and we wouldn't get complaints from parents. So late afternoon on Friday the 3rd, my 3 techs and I, we went up to Maple Hills and distributed approximately 35 devices. Folks came over to the Hope Center and basically picked them up, and we got them up and running, and it was quite an event. It was nice to see the gratitude of the folks there as they received their computers to be able to do the work that they needed to do. That night, I sent an email then to other parents that were in the district that said that they had reliable internet access. And on Saturday, on the 4th, we had our first drive-by at the middle school. And I think I invited 90 families to come, and we probably had about 35, 40 show up. A lot were kind of, I suppose, busy on the weekend, et cetera. So they started emailing back. And so we continued doing that on April 6th and 7th. Let's see, going ahead. On the 6th, the hotspots started coming in to 25.2, and I picked them up at their office, and we got more of them on the following day on the 7th, and we started working with our provider, Verizon, which is our business account with the district office, and we were able to basically get all of the plans enabled. Basically, I think that was finalized Wednesday morning on the 8th. So that allowed us then to start distributing units to folks that also required devices as well as access points. So we began distribution on the later, I think we may have started later that day on the 8th, for sure on the 9th. And then 10th, of course, was Good Friday. And so then we continued on the 13th. From that point on, most of the devices, I'm not going to say all of them, but most were distributed. And we spent the all of last week kind of finishing up with folks, trying to coincide with the locker pickups from all of the 3 buildings. And so they were able to drive by and pick up devices and hotspots if they needed them as well. So to date, we have still picking up on individual families that we never heard from through surveys. We're actually calling people now. I have teachers basically telling parents that require access or assistance to contact me directly so I can address it as a family, as opposed to one student in a grade level. So we're still working that out, but we really cut down. I think it was this morning we were able to, at least the ones that we knew of, we got down to about 10 students district-wide that we knew did not have access. I'm not saying that we didn't think that there were more, it's just those are the ones that we had been made aware of. So work still to be done there. To throw some numbers around, as of the end of today, we assisted 220 families with 250 plus Chromebooks picked up or delivered, and that also includes 45 hotspots. I'm kind of guessing at this number at this point. I haven't totally crunched all of the data, but we're at about 18% of total active households where we have supplied some sort of assistance in this project. What's interesting about that is it goes back to the very first few days of the online survey. That was trending between 16 and 18% for folks that were saying that they did require access, and that was even with a number of like 300-400 respondents. So that kind of held the line all the way through this process, which I thought was interesting. That's how we're going to finish up this week. We're also finally finding some time to get to some other much needed software changes and capabilities to help support distance learning further. After that time, between now and May 4th, we're going to, with the free time, we're going to kind of switch. Well, I shouldn't say it's free time, but free from the distribution process of it anyway. We're going to switch to being able to provide more end user support for both staff and students, which we've already done a little bit, but I expect that to continue. And of course, if we don't open up May 4th and we go through the end of the year, we'll continue to support distance learning in any way we can, and also start working on projects for next year, including our one-to-one IB anytime, anywhere for 10th grade, which starts in the fall, which is basically our first full rollout of a full grade level of take-home devices. To answer Kevin's question about the silver lining, I've had, obviously working with 25-2, we've been trying to come up with ideas to continue supporting some sort of community network, which I think is needed out here. But I also received an email from a consultant that's working with the city of Greenfield, and we had about an hour-long discussion about how do we make access better for all residents in Greenfield and presumably Rockford at some point. So that's been interesting. So it's leading to things that, those conversations were difficult maybe in the past. There's always been money available for rural broadband work from the state of Minnesota, but that generally involved working with the city, and the few times I've reached out in the past, there wasn't a lot of interest. So I guess that's one of my silver linings. And then the last thing, I do have to also give a shout out to my staff, Aaron Jensen, Dan Madsen, and Tess Stavlo. I couldn't have done any of this without their support and hard work. So with that, I thank you for the time. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm just looking out at my colleagues. Does anyone have any questions to ask this evening? I'm not seeing any. So what I will just give a commentary. I appreciate this update. I appreciate that that what your team did is work your hardest to work to level the playing field, right, for the kids, and to do everything you could to get creative, to get the devices out there, to do it in a safe way, to work to do it in an equitable way. I appreciate the data that you shared about the number of families that were served, and then I also appreciate just illuminating the community partnerships again with 25-2 and helping with hotspots and the network connectivity. And boy, isn't it amazing what situations like this bring out in people with, you highlighted your staff, and also just creating a different conversation at the municipal level, at the city level, about connectivity and internet and all of those sort of things. And, if there is a silver lining in any of this, hopefully this will help to bring some of those conversations to bear as well. So I just express gratitude to you and the team. This is, again, what was achieved in a very short period of time to support the distance learning is incredibly impressive. So thank you for the update. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, our next agenda item is our activities department update related to the COVID impact. And I'll call upon our activities. Before I go on, I'm gonna read Brady Anderson's comment. Brady said, "Bravo, you mobilized a small fleet of devices and the community thanks you. So thank you, Brady, for that comment. Move on to the next agenda item again is our activity department's update regarding the COVID impact. I'm going to call upon our athletic director, Mr. Pratt, to give his update this evening to us.
All right. Well, thank you. I don't know. Can you see me? Am I visible? All right. Okay. Well, first off, I'm going to start what I sent in. I'm going to start with number 2, which is the Minnesota State High School League. Minnesota State High School League actually is just in a holding pattern right now, waiting to find out what the governor is going to do with school closures. In the meantime, they have looked at maybe pushing seasons back into the summer. They've looked at different venues that could host the events if we were to have a shortened season. They're just looking at anything that they can do to try to get these kids an opportunity for the spring season. They're meeting almost weekly. They have phone calls that you can jump on as ADs and give your input on different things. And so from that, we break it down into the Wright County. In the Wright County, we're meeting weekly. Every Wednesday, we're meeting at 9 o'clock, and we have Google Docs, and we're talking every school, 16 schools in the Wright County, and we talk about paying coaches, who's paying coaches full, who's paying coaches the partial season, what are coaches doing? If we have cancellations, what do the schedules look like? Is it a shortened season? What are we doing for refunds? Are we partially refunding? Are we fully refunding? Are we rolling forward? So from those Google Docs, there's actually a statewide Google Doc that people are putting their input on those things as well, because it's important. We don't want to be the only school that pays all the coaches fully. You don't want to be the only school that doesn't pay the coaches. I think the misnomer is that, so-and-so season hasn't started. You need to understand that coaches start coaching well before the season begins. And right now, I can tell you our coaches are doing weekly check-ins. They're supplying workouts, optional workouts, and they're also helping with meal distribution. I'll kind of get into that a little bit later on. Just be aware, too, there's been a lot of talk about TRAP. And we need to understand that TRAP it's not necessarily fully governed by the State High School League. It's kind of a set-alone entity. The Minnesota Clay Target Association are the people that kind of run that. The Minnesota State High School League has a part of it. There's a lot of talk about shooting ranges opening up. And so what does that mean for the TRAP team? I have been in contact with the TRAP coaches. They're going to follow what we do as a school. They're not going to go off on their own. I don't think that looks good if everything's canceled but TRAP. That's a bad look. There are some schools that have also already canceled TRAP. There are some schools that have already canceled middle school athletics. We in the Wright County have not done any of that right now. We're in a holding pattern with the State High School League, and like I said, we're in communication all the time. So, it's a situation that we're all in. I feel bad for the kids. Feels really bad for the seniors. We did take part, so everybody knows, in the Be the Light Minnesota on April 9th at 8:20. We had the lights on for an hour and 24 minutes. For 124 minutes, 2 hours and 24 minutes, 2 hours and 4 minutes, 1 minute for every senior. And that was exciting. We had about 25 to 30 seniors that showed up and had to kind of tell them to separate a little bit here and there, but you can kind of understand this is their year, and it's kind of a drag right now for them. But I will say they're doing a great job. Late last week, I was given the task of taking over the meal distribution, which I obviously can't say that, so I changed it to Meals Are Bust. And basically, it's what we're doing. We're getting those buses out with all the meals on them. Shout out to the para. I changed it from an A team and B team to a para team and a rec team. And the para team are all the paras in the district, and they're 31 members. And the rec team is the RCC, the ECFE, and the coaches. And so they'll be doing next week. And I got to tell you right now, we put it out, and they're signing up on their own. This week is full, and next week is full. I have maybe 1 or 2 spots for next week. So it's a lot of fun. Getting to know the paras, getting to know everybody. Meeting the buses, loading the buses, getting them to their spot. I have worked about 3 or 4 days just handing out meals, and that's a lot of fun to see the families. We're working on a kind of a secret surprise here. Hopefully not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. I'm not going to talk in detail about it, but it's just going to be a little change to what's going on with the meal distribution, or the meals are bust. So, you know, the activities department, especially the athletic department, has pretty much been shut down. And we are going to ask the coaches, when Jim gives us the okay, that they're going to come in and do some equipment clean out, some inventory, and some reconfiguration of the equipment room. Like Jim said, take advantage of some opportunities if we have them. If we end up getting closed, taking that opportunity to go through some old equipment, and especially the uniforms and things like that, we'll set those aside, and maybe we'll have another sale again at homecoming. So that's kind of it from my end. I do want to just quickly give a shout out to the paras and the rec and all the custodian staff. Everybody's just doing an amazing job. A little bit of numbers real quickly. We're servicing for meals about 400 to 500 meals a day, and that's 6 stops. And the people that are volunteering, not volunteering, but the people that are doing those things, the paras especially, they're also helping in classroom support and office support. And you heard about the different schools doing the bagging and tagging and getting the things out. So they're really doing a lot of work, and they do it with a smile. And they, like Jim said, these people here in Rockford are willing to help out and reach out and do the best they can for the people. And it's really rewarding, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of. It's short. Sorry, guys. Any questions?
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Kevin, did you want to ask your question?
All right. What are the I do like, right? What are the unanticipated positives, Dan?
You know, I think getting to know this lady I live with, you know, seeing her more often. No, you know, for me, it really is personal. Like getting to know the paras, you know, in the other buildings. I know the high school paras, but getting to know them, and then some of the other ECFE and the RCC staff, and being able to work with them, that's a lot of fun. And also, I think really the connections making with the other ADs and the other schools, and talking about the different ways they're handling these situations, and really, you know, kind of getting ideas from other people, and sometimes just understand that we do stuff pretty well in Rockford, and being able to share that information with them. So I think that would be it.
Great. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing just on this while I have it? I was in a conversation, I think it was maybe with Rhonda, as we were planning the board agenda, and she mentioned the number of coaches that are even coaching now in the virtual world, just checking in, and so much coaching happens outside of the off the field or outside of the court or whatever. So you know, as much as we appreciate all the staff, the teachers, the administration, and paras that have been doing things, we also extend that to the coaches. The way that they've stepped up to coach at this time too has been brought to my attention. So I want to say thank you for the way you're leading that, and if you want to share that appreciation with them too, I'd love that.
I will. I just want you to know the coaching staff that's helping out with the meals are bust are some of the coaches from the fall too. Some of the coaches from the winter, I mean, they're stepping up. I have one coach who actually is still working, but his wife is stepping up to help. I mean, so they're taking it serious, and they really are diving in. So it's fun to see. So I will let them know. Thank you.
All right. I'm not seeing any other comments or anybody raising their hands. So I will echo what Kevin said. Just gratitude for the coaches and gratitude for the paras, and thank you so much for this update. You know, I think I'm going to underline a little bit of what Kevin said. I think earlier on what we heard from our principals' reports, the connections matter, you know, and there are so many different ways that kids are connected to their school and their community. And the coaching staff, the paras, everybody getting out there and connecting is so critically important. So thank you. I will also echo, thank you for the leadership there. And then also, I think from a board level, it's just really nice to know how you're connecting with other members of our conference and thinking through some of the common issues that the COVID, situation is bringing up, whether it's contracts or how we're approaching the spring season and, all of those sort of things. And so just from a board level, I just want to express gratitude for that too, because then it really does show, we are all in this together and we're all taking as similar approaches as we can as we make some of those tough choices and figure it out. So thank you so much for your update tonight. Really appreciate it. All right. Next is our Community Ed RCC COVID Impact Update. And I will call upon our interim Community Ed Director. As you'll notice in our consent agenda, Miss Melissa Joseph was hired as our interim CE Director. I want to extend first congratulations to you on that and welcome you to the screen.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for the congratulations. So I just want to go over, we have several areas that fall under community ed. So first, I'll just start with the community center. Obviously, the community center is closed. We've suspended all membership payments because, most people don't come for our classes that are included in our membership fees. They come to use the equipment. So we've suspended all membership payments as of, we didn't charge for April, and we're working on the half of month for March. So the staff at the RCC has been helping with meal distribution and helping work on like front desk manuals, things like that, training manuals for when we get new employees, other things like that. Our fitness instructors have actually been giving online fitness classes. Like Megan Leapoltz does her Monday, Wednesday, Friday class at 9 a.m. She does Facebook Live. That's going great. And I know there's a lot of places you could just go on YouTube and other things and get free workouts, but people like our instructors. And so we've gotten a lot of very positive comments back from our members, just thanking us that it's our actual instructors and they don't have to go search for somebody else that they don't know and they can't follow and things like that. So we have Julie doing yoga, Suzanne doing yoga, Megan, Olympia has sent in a few things. So it's been very nice to have our actual instructors doing that for our members. And as Jim has mentioned, all the facilities, all rentals have been halted and canceled. I have had several requests, can't we open the tennis courts? Can't we open the track? It's just like Jim said, we want to stay safe, and because it is on school property, everything is closed on school property. So I've just basically told people, unfortunately, no, including the tennis courts and the track. We can't supervise that to make sure people are social distancing. And as soon as we open the track, there's going to be flag football and football games and stuff. So Jim and I have been working together on that, but I have had a lot of questions from community members about opening those two areas up. But for now, until we get further direction from the governor on things like that, it'll stay closed. Moving on to community ed. So unfortunately, our spring and summer brochure just went out right before all this happened. So if we had just waited a few days, we would have been okay. Could have stopped production, but so our spring programs have been canceled. However, was kind of waiting for the distance learning to see how that was going with parents and kids. I will be looking into, there are a lot of companies that are offering virtual classes or getting actual kits that people can come pick up and like art projects and things like that. So I'm looking at that for May, again, waiting to see what's going to happen with everything before I go forward with that plan. But there are some things out there. Some of them are free. that I'll be offering. Some of them, there is a cost involved, but then that way we could actually be bringing in a little bit of revenue, because as we go through all these things, everything community ed is a fee-based. The community center runs because of membership payments. Community ed is fee-based, Galaxy, and our early childhood program. So I will be looking into that. And then as of now, we're just exploring, I'm planning on having the summer classes. You know, I'm trying to be optimistic, hoping that we can have our summer classes and camps. Even if we need to move the camps till later, that's another thing we're looking at. But our camps in the summer are just so huge. So hoping those can happen. And again, going to just wait on the governor to see if we need to cancel our summer programs as well. Okay, so emergency childcare. So we've all been calling it Galaxy. We are using our Galaxy staff, but I just want to make, just so everyone is clear, Galaxy childcare is closed. That was mandated. All school-age childcare centers needed to close. And we, as a school district, were to provide childcare for emergency childcare for tier 1 workers, and if we can, tier 2 workers, essential employees. So although we are using our Galaxy staff because that makes the most sense, because they're trained in it, they've been doing a great job. It's not Galaxy childcare, it is emergency childcare. I just want to make that clear, because some people are like, well, why can't I still send my kids there? Because we are using the staff. So that's what's happening right now. Due to space and staff restrictions, we're only providing for tier 1 employees and our own district staff that are coming on site. So if we have a principal with kids that is working on site, we're also offering childcare to them. And then again, summer programs are set to run until further notice. But we're just taking it day by day like everybody else. So ECFE, which for those of you who don't know, because a lot of people don't, that stands for Early Childhood Family Education and Preschool. The good thing about both of these programs is that we will still be receiving money from the state, and that, like our Pathway 2 scholarships for ECFE, we're still receiving that. So that this staff is good, because we'll still have the budget and the money for them. And so with that, even though it's not mandated, we are providing distance learning for the registered students, and even the ECFE classes, the family education classes, because we know, and all the research shows, that our retention rate for kids that attend our preschool, 90% of them are then enrolling as kindergartners. So this is so important, and that's why we've been working very hard. Tiffany Reinhardt's been doing an amazing job. She's actually been on well, she wasn't on the first couple, I think, but she's been on the distance learning calls that Kevin Keller was talking about, because working on how to get the curriculum out there and things like that. So this is just an awesome thing that not every school district is doing, but we are, again, just because of that human connection. And these kids, it's just as important for them to see their classmates and their teachers at this level as it is at any other level. So that's been going really well. Obviously, like everyone else has said, there's been some bumps in the road, and we're learning as we go, but we're getting it done. So, and again, our ECFE summer program, just like everything, we're holding off on that. Last area of community education, gymnastics. We were ending a session that week. It was our last week on the week of March 16th. So the good thing is we have not taken any registrations for gymnastics for a spring session. So that's just on hold. We just didn't take any registrations, so we're not having any classes. We didn't have to provide 150 refunds because nobody had registered yet. So that program is just on hold. No refunds needed to go back. So staff isn't they're not working because, again, staffing for gymnastics is based off of registration. And since we didn't have any registrations, we didn't need to staff it. So that's kind of community ed in a nutshell. Trying to be brief because I'm told I always talk a really long time. So trying to step it up here. Any questions?
You did great. Any questions? No, I don't think.
Okay.
I think the only thing, just, I mean, again, as we move forward, we've only been in this situation for a month, right? So it's the unknown. I think it's just continued understanding of any impact to the budget as it relates to the RCC closure and, you know, what that all looks like. And again, the book isn't written yet, but I appreciate the
Correct.
update tonight on that.
Well, and with that, I will say that we are meeting again. I'm meeting with Share and things like that. So as we do more forward, we're talking about that actually this week. So,
all right, thank you.
Okay.
Yep. Great. Any other questions, comments? I don't see anybody raising their hand, so thank you so much for the update.
Thank you.
All right. Yes. All right. Next is our the financial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and I'm going to call on Superintendent Dean to provide this update tonight that was prepared by our business office.
Sure. Thanks for that. I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted just listening to the reports of the staff. I mean, before I turned it over, I said to you that, you know, we've been working like crazy. So hopefully you get a feel of what we've been doing. It's absolutely been a team effort. I appreciated John Engel putting up that calendar, because that calendar really captured the fact that what we've done was in that small little window of time. And so again, it's not just the Rockford staff, it's our business communities, it's our nonprofits. It was our faith-based organizations that stepped up during that first week. It's been everyone. The one group that we really haven't talked about, but it's going to lead into the financial report here, is the district office. Because the business manager, our HR, Paula, Sarah, Kathy, they're kind of working behind the scenes. And throughout the past 30 days, the landscape has changed daily. I mean, we literally get a daily update on changes that are coming out of MDE, changes that are coming out of the health department. And the folks in the district office has really kept a handle on making sure we're not missing a step, or we're not filling out an application in a timely manner, or changing up our practices the way we're being directed. So again, that staff has done a great job at just keeping us in line with all the changes that are happening. And yes, they are happening daily. It's starting to feel a little bit like every other day, but it's not much. But anyway, Cher was unable to be with us this evening, but she did prepare a report. There were 3 bullets, and so I'd just like to read her bullets out loud. So bullet number 1, planning for distance learning started March 16th, with actual distance learning starting, of course, on March 30th. Meal distribution has been modified in the last few weeks. Bullet number 2, invoices and other financial data are currently just getting entered or have not been received. As you know, this has only been 1 month and is too soon to have any statistical data. Hourly employees are paid 1 month behind, and most invoices for utilities are also 1 month behind. By the end of June or early July, we will have a couple of months of data entered into our financial system, and we'll be able to better determine how this is affecting expenditures in our district. And then bullet number 3 is, we are monitoring and following the guidelines from the Minnesota Department of Education that impacts all areas of the district. and then there's a link to that web page. And so that web page is changed every day. Sometimes for a while there, it was changed a few times a day. Has been a moving target since day one. But we won't know the real financial implications of the past 30 days and kind of looking forward for another month, because again, we don't even really know the change in usage in, let's say, utilities, because we haven't received those invoices yet. So that's the financial update from the business office.
Great, thank you. All right. And I'll just add to your message, just in planning board agendas and doing everything, the district office has been definitely adapting daily with everything. So thank you for acknowledging their efforts and strong work during this time too. Really appreciate that. All right. Our next agenda item is our acknowledgement of contributions. It's a resolution. It is prepared, written in your agenda packet, board members. I would very much entertain a motion, and then I would proceed with the roll call resolution process.
I'll make.
Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, sorry, Isaiah. I'll make the motion to accept the resolution, the acknowledgement of contributions as stated.
All right, so I have a first from Jessica and a second from Kevin Campbell. Second from Kevin Campbell. And again, presented in front of you are donations from Boston Scientific and T. D'Amico. And again, it's with gratitude that we absolutely accept these donations and to the district. With that, any further comments or discussion? All right, roll call vote then. I will call on Beth Praska.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Brady Anderson.
Aye.
And then Amy Edwards, aye. The resolution to accept the contributions as written has passed unanimously. Thank you for that. All right. And next agenda item is our MSBA recommended policies. This is our second and final reading of policies 601, 613R, 615. And then non-substantial changes also in 602, 602R, 904, and then removal of policy 617. Again, this is a second reading, final and second reading. This is an action item. So I would take a motion, or if anybody had any comments that they needed to bring forward at this time.
I'll make a motion that we accept the policies based on the second and final reading.
Great, thank you. That's a first by Kevin.
Eric Gordy will second that.
That was a second by Eric Gordy. All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, I have no further discussion, so this will be a roll call vote. Brady Anderson.
Aye.
All right, Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Beth Praska. Eric
Aye.
Gordy.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Aye. The policy revisions are approved as presented. And thank you, Kathy, as I say every time the policies come forward, for all of the work that you do to prepare that for us and keep these up to date. Really appreciated. All right. And our next agenda item is our strategic planning process update. And this, I think I can turn this over to Superintendent Dean. I know she's been in contact with TeamWorks just to prepare or to bring forward just an oral discussion with us about kind of what you've heard. Again, it's written in our board packet, but if you wouldn't mind just speaking to it, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Edwards. Well, as you know, we participated in the first 3 steps, if you will, of our strategic planning process. But now, given our current reality, we have to kind of relook at that timeline. And there's a couple of options, but the one that I'm actually going to recommend that we look at is a modified schedule. In other words, keeping the framework for our strategic plan, but really just kind of postponing or pushing back the schedule, and likely pushing back that schedule to the fall. And so this is an action item that I'm hoping that we can maybe discuss and hopefully vote on, and that is to reach out to Ray Queener, who is our consultant for TeamWorks, and schedule, take our current schedule and just push it back to maybe an August restart date. And so again, this is an action item because we currently trying to maintain our current schedule is just going to be difficult at this point.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too that, you know, we had just talked about a little bit in our preparation coming into this agenda item is with, you know, there's options. You could, you know, do it virtually and, you know, do other things like that. However, one of the benefits of the process is actually truly coming together in the same room and using the, you know, tactile, you know, things, Post-it notes and all of that, and really having that sort of a conversation together. And so I think that was one of the things that we had discussed as well, is just the need to come together. Yep, go ahead.
Well, in addition to that, we're learning so much through this process that it may guide our vision, if you will, in terms of what our strategic path may be moving forward. Just the distance learning and our use of technology and everything we're learning in terms of how students learn and how we teach differently. So again, it may change the lens in which we're looking at our strategic planning process.
Yep. Well stated. Does anyone have any questions for Rhonda? Eric?
No, I was just going to no, agreed. I mean, there's a lot of work currently going on trying to get used to our current reality, and pushing this back just makes sense. Just to be respectful of everyone's time and efforts with just their regular job going on. So with that, I would like to make a motion to look at modifying the schedule to resume this fall for the strategic plan.
Great. I have a motion on the floor, Jessica.
I'll second it.
I have a first and a second. And the motion is to modify the schedule with TeamWorks, likely to resume this fall, but not to change any of the core structure of it, just delay it is the motion that's on the floor. Any further comment or discussion? Brady.
Thank you. Everybody has been already overtaxed and doing all the incredible things that we've heard about tonight from a district level. It's just amazing. So yeah, it totally makes sense to delay it. Have you, Rhonda, been in contact with them at all and I know you've got just a few things going on. So, but to ask, what's the best, you know, how do we restart things after hitting pause? Is it just as simple as just delaying and then picking things back up? Or is there, you know, is there an ideal timeline to complete this by from their vantage point when it comes to a cycle in the school year, knowing it won't, you know, it's going to be different than the timeline that we had set? Is there any advice that they've given us from a timing perspective and kind of a re-engaging in the process perspective?
You know, we haven't talked in detail about how we're going to restart in the fall. but I do know that Teamworks as an organization is involved with strategic planning throughout the state with other school districts. And so they are working with a lot of districts to restart that strategic planning process. And so we haven't talked specifically about how he would maybe review what we've already done, but I would assume that that would be a part of it. But the next stage that we were in was really starting to engage with the community. And we just didn't feel it was a good time to really start engaging the community given where we're at. I mean, our community, I mean, you heard what our principal, I mean, most of you have kids in the home. And so trying to do your job virtually and try to get your kids engaged with school, it's just a difficult time for everyone. So they haven't talked specifically on how they would re-engage or restart our strategic planning process, but they are working with multiple districts. And so they will, we haven't talked specifically, but they'll have a plan, no doubt.
Okay,
and
thank you.
I could see us talking with them a little bit in more detail, maybe the end of June, 1st of July.
Perfect. Thanks, Rhonda.
Sure.
Great. Are there any other questions? Great question. Thanks for asking it. All right, so I've got a motion on the floor, a first and a second. And I have nobody else raising their hand for any further discussion. So with that, I will do a roll call vote, starting with Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Beth Praska.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Brady Anderson.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Aye. The motion carries for Rhonda to now work with the Teamworks to modify the strategic planning timeline. So thank you for bringing that forward tonight. All right, next we will go into committee updates. Well, first I'll actually go into an announcements section. So the school board work session will be Monday, May 18th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. via teleconference. And just for the, again, I'll go back into how we usually do our board work. If there are district administrators or staff on the phone, you're welcome to stay, but we are getting more into just our committee updates. So we won't be calling on you for extra help. So if you do want to disconnect and hang out with your family, you're more than welcome to. Sorry, I forgot to say that. Next is our announcement of the regular meeting of the Board of Education, which is Monday, May 18th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. via teleconference. And then we'll just go right on into our board committee updates and our superintendent update. I'm going to start with, I'll start with Brady because you're on my screen right now. So Brady, do you have any?
Well, I'll make it quick. I don't have any committee-related updates, just the updates around the superintendent search. Congratulations, Rhonda. We're thrilled. But I won't go into details of recapping that all because we've got minutes that do all that. So I will just cut my update off there.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Brady. Next, why don't I go to, how about Jessica?
All right. Back on March 17th, I believe. Hold on, my calendar just flipped on me. Yeah, March 17th, I attended a Masico board meeting. And then have attended, we've had 2 negotiation meetings. And then, of course, all the superintendent search and interviews and all of that we already have meeting minutes on. So that's my report.
Great. Thank you. Next, I will go on to, how about Beth Praska for your updates.
I don't have anything to update because all my meetings have been canceled.
Well, all right. Sounds good. Thanks, Beth. Eric, how about your updates?
Sure. Just planning sessions with School Exec Connect, with planning the Google forms and the technology that was associated to it, and making sure they were able to work with Kathy on getting their invite set up. Also started to gather information for where we're going to go with the superintendent's contract and to share that information out as the committee continues to move forward.
Great. Thank you for those updates. I'll move on to Kevin.
Great. With the COVID stuff, there was a bit of a pause between the negotiations on teachers, and that has started happening again. So we're doing that in much of a similar way to how we're doing these meetings here. So been doing those pieces along with just, I'll say, that was a great, I just think it was a great process. Eric, Beth, and Jessica, thank you for the work you did to put the superintendent search together. When we joined on, it was a very thorough process that you did. So when we interviewed the 6 candidates and ultimately selected Rhonda moving forward, I thought that was really good and went really smoothly. And a lot of that was because of the work that you guys did as a committee. So thank you for that. And Rhonda, congratulations. That's it for now.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. And then just real similar updates. I mean, a lot of my meetings were canceled. For example, the Metro Association of Metro School Districts, that meeting wasn't held virtually this month. I think if the situation continues, they're looking for virtual means for our May meeting. So I would imagine a lot of the committee work that you're all involved in will, I would imagine, start to move that way if the conditions stay as they are. And just other connections to note is just meeting with Rhonda to get this agenda teed up and prep for that. So hopefully it was a meaningful board meeting tonight. And again, I just will echo all of the gratitude with all of the work that the entire district has done to respond to this really unprecedented situation. So just meeting with Rhonda to get this all teed up. Contract negotiations, again, echo what Kevin said. We had to take a little bit of a pause with COVID, but we're back on track again. And that's been a fantastic process working with the teachers and talking through the contract. And then similarly, just gratitude to our search committee. Thank you so much for all of the hard work that you put in and figuring out how to help us move forward when we're doing things differently. So thank you for that. I really appreciate all of that time that you've done. So, and again, it was a great process to participate in. So next we'll go on to Rhonda for your superintendent updates for us. Anything you'd like to share or meetings of note?
In terms of the meetings, I think someone mentioned it earlier, how well they know their team. Well, the team of superintendents that I've been meeting with now over the past month has really strengthened. I've been meeting with the Masico superintendent group, and we've been meeting literally once a week, sometimes twice a week. The Northwest Suburban Independent School District superintendent group, we meet once a week. There's a rural superintendent group that we've been meeting once a week. And then I've been on calls with MDE and the Minnesota Department of Health twice a week. And so, yeah, over the past 30 days, I've really engaged with my professional colleagues on a pretty regular basis, and we know each other quite well. And even the superintendents involved with Reimagine Minnesota have re-engaged. And we just had our first meeting since COVID just last Friday. So there's just a lot going on throughout the state as it relates to teaching and learning, and really looking at how this is forcing us to look at teaching and learning differently. Someone had mentioned it earlier, just with the the distribution of technology, we've really helped level the playing field a little bit. But how can we now take that and go further with that and really look at the playing field and how we engage our kids? We're all on the steep learning curve, and it's actually exciting because we need to do some things differently, things to close that achievement gap and really see our kids excel. So I'm excited about it.
Thank you. Any questions for Rhonda? No, I don't see any. All right, so next we'll go into our next agenda item, which is our discussion around process for the superintendent contract negotiation. Rhonda, this is an open meeting, so people can certainly stay on, or you are welcome to go, because we won't be asking you any questions at this evening. So
I will sign out if that's okay.
That's just fine.
I'm sitting here.
Yeah. That's just fine. We're just going to talk through processes and make sure that our negotiation team knows the next steps to work on settling your contract. So,
well, I appreciate the opportunity. As I said in the interview, I will work dogged for this district. I appreciate this district. The kids are engaging. The staff is supportive. The parents are involved. I mean, and look what's happening right now. I feel blessed to have the opportunity to serve this district. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for your leadership, and thanks for pulling together this really awesome agenda tonight. It was just nice to hear from the team in this way. So thank you.
Have a great team.
All right. With that, signing off. You go. All right. Perfect. So team, I think I see everybody. So this is just our agenda item to really talk through process in how we are proceeding forward with settling the contract for Miss Dean. As you know, she's got an interim contract in place. Negotiating or having this conversation, if it was a union conversation, we would go into closed session, right, to talk about things. But those same rules actually don't apply when we're talking about superintendent contracts. So it was really important to bring together this board just to make sure that we're all settled on the process that we're going to go through, that everybody understands how that's going to go. We've got a negotiations team that we've already got in place, which is Kevin Campbell, Eric Gordy, and Jessica Johnson. That's the group that we had nominated earlier this year. And so that would still be the group that would go forward with, the more formal conversations with Miss Dean. But really, this is an opportunity in your board packet. There's a model contract that you can take a look at. MSBA best practice is to really look at model contract language, which is definitely more straightforward, and it's a nice starting point oftentimes for contracts to go from. And so I'm just going to maybe turn it over to Kevin to maybe start talking through some of the high points that you might want just to outline with Beth, myself, Brady, since we won't be in the negotiations with you directly. And just for the purposes of clarification, the negotiations team will get the contract to a certain point, and then it comes to the board for formal inspection, review, and approval. So I just wanted to highlight that all as well. And I'm going to turn it over to Kevin at this point, and then lean on the team to kind of walk us through some of the key points that you just would want to solicit our feedback on.
Perfect. So there's a couple things actually, Eric, you guys know Eric, one of the things he's really good at is kind of forecasting where things are going, right? So he's looked at MSBA kind of structures and in different things as well. In that, as he was just searching for, and he and the committee were doing things for hiring our new superintendent in general. So a couple things that looking at MSBA that I think would be some places where there's some things that we could get clarity on is the length of a contract that we want to do. We had the benefit of Rhonda being an interim and having an interim stipend or interim pay kind of around. So it'd be interesting to hear from the board on kind of what you want to feel comfortable around that. Normally, when we were in the closed session with teachers, we would say, hey, let's keep it somewhere between these two pieces. These are what we're comfortable for. We currently have a meeting scheduled with Rhonda on the 29th at 7 a.m. to have those negotiation meetings. And at this point, we've also Cher has done some work on looking at previous superintendent's contracts. So our previous superintendent's contract was not so much modeled by MSBA, so we can decide how closely we want to follow that model in those pieces as well. So those are kind of the conversations. And again, Eric has really kind of done some good forecasting of some steps on this piece as well. So yeah, that's guess any other input from you, Eric, or the board around parameters.
Great. I'll call on Eric. It looks like Eric, you would like to add to that. Thank you.
So the model contract that we do have in front of us is not only the MSBA model contract language, this is also model contract language that's suggested by MASA, which is the administrators group as well. So they kind of work together to have a good working document. I think just to level set and to go forward to have a something that's well known across not only those two organizations, but what also other districts are familiar with in terms of this format and this languages. I believe it's a good place to start for our conversations. One of the hard things that we'll notice with the comparables for salaries for neighboring districts or any contract that's around us is that it's self-reported by districts, and some of the districts, their last report was from the 2011-12 school year, and the most recent or the most current contract numbers from any around us, I think, was from the 16-17 school year. So even though we have some numbers, we're still quite a bit behind where we were when we look at compensation packages. So I'll just pause there as well.
Mute. So a couple of things, just because I know you're looking just for some directional, like kind of what are we feeling and what are the things that would be important. Something that's important to me is a straightforward and easy to interpret contract. So given choice, if we can get as close to possible with model language, that would be fantastic. I know that there are different schools of thought. Do you write in information on like, here's how we're going to do an evaluation and this is what that looks like in a contract? I know MSBA has a very specific opinion on that, to not do that, to not include that in a contract language. We don't just recommend that you follow up your process and how you do evaluations, because those can always be changed. If you write it in a contract, it has to be renegotiated. So I know when I went through some of my superintendent evaluation contract, training, that was one of the things that they recommended was to not have something like that listed in the contract. So I would be supportive of not having that listed in the contract as well, to follow MSBA language. The other things that, I would just ask, and again, I'm just kind of just spitballing off the top of my head. The other thing that I would ask is that we do whatever we can to limit unnecessary liability. So sometimes there's, depending on how contracts are written, there can be, sometimes there's not like a cap on how much vacation you carry over, or how much this you carry over, or how much that you carry over from year to year to year. And just from a fiscal responsibility perspective, I would really value that we have some good language around what can be carried over and what wouldn't be. And so, I would look for you to help determine what the right way to do that is, but just from a directional, sort of a conversation, I would value that, to make sure that we pay some attention to carryovers and liabilities as it relates to those sort of things, because that can be problematic as well. And I believe that there's model language out there, to consider when you put the contract together. So I'm just going to start with 3. Those are my kind of 3 that I'm going to start with. And then hopefully, we'll continue the conversation, but those are the things that would be top of my mind.
Are there any other parameters that you board would like to make sure that we stay within as we're meeting? Then we would negotiate and come back, of course, to the board and say, here's kind of where the contract, and we would also have a lawyer look at that just to make sure that everything is tied up on that. That's a new opportunity as we have a superintendent come in to really have a solid contract and with good language that we can build on should we have successful years and want to negotiate again. We want to make sure that this foundation is really good on this contract.
Yeah. Brady?
Yeah, I just my parameters are similar to yours, Amy. Stay close to the model contract where possible would be a strong perspective of mine. I don't, unique and novel contracts are not something I super in support of. But so close to model contract. You touched on it just a moment ago, legal expertise in reviewing the contract to ensure that this contract as drafted aligns with, generally speaking, other superintendent contracts that lawyers have reviewed, that whomever the law firm, if it's Kennedy and Graven or whomever, would have expertise in reviewing. Certainly they've seen plenty. I'm sure they would be able to offer up an opinion on this one as well. And then in terms of salary, it's obviously Rhonda is a woman who's got a lot of leadership experience, and this is her first superintendent role. So it's kind of tricky to factor all of that stuff in, right? So I'm going to kind of lean into you guys to say what's, put forth a number that makes good sense here. She has been in education and leadership a long time and brings a lot of great things to the table, and is a first year superintendent. So those are two things to look at, I guess, when you're looking at the comparables out in the market. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting walking into this thing. So
thank you, Brady. I appreciate that. And I appreciate one other thing before we go on to more comments. You did perfectly. So this isn't evaluative. This is just talking about, so thank you for the way you presented your opinion on experience and those sort of things versus because this isn't an evaluative process of the person that I wanted to say thank you for that, because I did not give that statement at the beginning, and I originally was going to, because it can get tricky. All right. Anybody else? Beth, did you have any parameters or additional insights you'd like to provide to our negotiations committee?
Not really. I'm just looking forward to seeing what comes forward. I looked over the sample contract, and I think if we stick with what they recommend and with our own little take on it, I think we'll be fine. And I'll look forward to what you guys bring forward to us.
All right. And then I'll just add in Jessica. Actually, Jessica, did you want to? Yes, you're unmuted. Would you like to say something?
So we've discussed back and forth, wondering 2-year, 3-year, and what is the board's feel on that for a contract, a 2-year, 3-year?
Well, on top of that, before we get into there, I would like to say that there are usual and customary objects that occur within superintendent contracts. You can look at some of the people that interviewed with us as well. Their contracts are now available for view. One of the people that not that we're modeling on anyone, but superintendent contracts typically have some. They have some standard associated to them typically. But as it's written, our state statute reads that a superintendent's contract is not able to be entered into up to no more than 3 years. I think that's written in there. If you look at their model contract language, they do have line items. It's an or on the salary, and the salary is either negotiable yearly or it's a stated salary years going forward, and they have 3 lines on there just to accommodate the up to 3 years. So, whatever that's good conversation to have here. And I'd be interested to hear what y'all are thinking.
Great. So I guess for me, the only one that I really know was a 3-year contract, and there's something around stability when you're offering that 3-year contract in a role like this. I think there's precedent. You can't go more than that, obviously, by state statute. But I would say I would be very comfortable with that if that's where you all got to. From a salary perspective, it's simpler if it's just this year, that year, right? Renegotiating it every year seems like it could be challenging or a distraction or whatever. So there is some sense of stability in just having a set fee schedule every year for the duration of the contract. I would love if you have an opinion as to why it might be a good idea to not do that. I'd love to learn more from you guys' opinion.
One of the things, Eric just unmuted himself. He wants to go. One of the things that, just being in different negotiation periods, I'm pretty aware of things like, what is our funding going to look like? And we don't know that right now, right? So one of the things we want to be very careful when we're negotiating contracts is, what are we locking ourselves into that now if we could do it over, we wouldn't, right? So that's one of the reasons that a evaluative kind of time each year might make sense, especially with all this going on. We don't know what funding might be on a contract, whether it's 2 years or 3 years. That might give the district some ability to say, you know what, we love the job you're doing, and financially we can't make that right now. So there's some things that gives freedom to the district on that.
For a shorter contract.
Well, whether it's 2 years or 3 years,
but to
just
do that,
being able to, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, that rationale makes very much sense. To do it that way. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I'll just parallel Kevin's comment. I mean, right now our budget is, the amount of money that she's currently making as interim superintendent, we have that available in our budget and moving forward. Cher's done a nice job of projections with a 1% conservative increase in the funding formula. She also has in our budget, if you look at it, projected, and she would always say, I'm projecting a 3% salary and benefit increase every year for all of our bargaining units. So she's kind of budgeting in But that's not I mean, that's what she told us at the last meeting. So none of that's just her projections to make sure that our budgets are in good position. That's just projections though, right? Because she does a 1% for the state, but all I'm saying is that we have an idea. Do we want to put values and numbers in? I don't know. Do we know if the state is going to give us 1% or nothing? I don't know, and that's what I'm worried about.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense, Eric. Thank you for that. Very much so. It's unknown, and we kind of put all these placeholders in our budget, not knowing exactly how the state funding will be, what our enrollment will be, all of those sort of things. And I think the other thing that we are hearing too is just as it relates to COVID and as it relates to all of that that's going on, there's nothing guaranteed right now. And I think that that's what I'm hearing from our negotiations team is, that's kind of the landscape we're in, is that there is nothing guaranteed as far as what our funding is going to look like next year and all of those sort of things. So perhaps a more conservative approach to contracting might be something we would want to try for. And I think that's what I hear you potentially saying, so that it gives us some flexibility. If the seas change and we can do something different next year, great. If not, we're not locked into something that's going to be problematic for our district. I thank you for kind of going down that path with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Great. Any other comments on that? I would support that. I mean, if you can get to a point where you do to me, it doesn't matter if it's a 2 or a 3 year contract, I guess, however that makes it easier. I mean, if you can do the salary negotiations in a way where we reconvene and kind of reconfigure in a way that's fair and mutually agreeable, that would be something to think about. I have not looked at some of the recent contracts that have come to bear. Is that what you're seeing too?
In terms,
superintendent contracts that have just been kind of put forward. You mentioned that there's new hire contracts that have been put out there. Are you seeing kind of a trend right now in that kind of let's relook at it next year for your salary?
Yeah, so if you look at the model contract in there, it does show an or statement in article. I just have to find it again. In Article 7, it talks about the benefits and salary. But it is Article 9 talks about the salary, and that's what we're talking about. It's this or that.
Yeah.
So they're agreeing on there. I haven't looked at the salary structures going in those others, but I'll do that prior to.
Okay.
As long as they're on the other board packets, I'll take a look at them as well. So, and
awesome.
share that with the rest of the committee, unless the committee finds it before me, that'd be great.
Thank you. Sounds good. Okay. Brady or Beth, what are your thoughts on kind of if they can do this, kind of relook at salary next year, if that works out? Or would you be agreeable to that, or does it matter? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing to me is to find the right starting point, right, for this first year. And, I think if it's probably not a lengthy negotiation each time if you have to revisit the annual salary component, because that's one of many components of the comp package for the superintendent. So I guess not. I don't really have strong feelings either way. I don't think it would be a huge burden on the district to revisit the base salary annually. I mean, if you think about how are the other contracts structured, right? And I know that they're different types of contracts. I get that, but they're 2 or 3 years in duration, and that specify the increases and are very prescriptive. So if we wanted to do something more aligned with other contracts, probably the first of the two options in Article 9. If we wanted something that's a bit more flexible, but probably at the end of the day isn't going to yield significantly different results, is my estimation, the second option. Because after that first number is set, it's not like there's going to be a 40% increase the following year. If that was the case, we'd all probably stay at our jobs forever if we could get a 40% increase year over year. But anyway, I think either option is fine. So,
Brady, one of the things that I oh, sorry, Amy, can this be conversational? Can I go?
I'm calling on you now, Kevin.
Okay, perfect. Sorry.
That's okay.
One of the things that is interesting about contracts, and one of the reasons I like the idea that we can go year by year is if this becomes if there's a long tenure there, and this is something that happens with contracts, if you go a 1, 2, 3, I don't know if there's ever been a 4%, whatever, those things just compound on each other. That the truth is right now, if we were negotiating this contract prior to COVID and we had the projections, that number would probably be higher than you look and go, okay, what's strategically smart during a COVID pandemic, right? And so this kind of gives us a benefit as a district, but it may also give a benefit to the receiver of that contract as well, right? So let's say, we're going in and we're saying, look, we don't know if we're going to get funding from the state. At this point, it's going to go a flat piece, right? Because let's say that's the worst piece. Well, if it didn't have any effect, well, next year, if we're in a good spot and the state actually does some things, well, now you can actually negotiate there as well. So there's some play on each, and it's probably, somewhere between 0 and, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if I've ever seen 4%. So somewhere between those numbers, but that can be significant with a superintendent salary. And if we do it simply on the salary and not on the entire package, you know what I mean? If there's a salary of whatever increase per year, then I think that could be, I don't think it would be a long drawn out conversation each year as much as okay, what do we do here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that would be the only recommendation that I would have is if that is the way you land, and again, I'm kind of open to either as long as it's fiscally responsible, consistent with our current run rate. We've got a budget in place right now to pay our superintendent. It's projected, it's in there. As long as it's kind of within that current framework, I'm generally okay with it. I think if you do choose to go with the re-look at salary each year of the contract, whether it's 2 or 3 years, making sure that there's a clause in there that it's not, and I don't know how it is, that's why you'll have to work with the legal team or the MSBA deal to make sure that it's not opening up the whole contract again for an entire renegotiation of everything. Just make sure that the language is clear that way. That would be my only thing, if that's how you guys end up wanting to go once you play out the numbers. So, yep. Cool. Any other things you want to run by the full board before you guys go into negotiations? Okay, so you've got kind of some direction on the contract. We want you, as I think I've heard, try to, close as possible to MSBA language, limit our liability, whatever that looks like, generally as a goal, as a kind of directional statement, whether it's, vacation or as you model out the salary, those sort of things as it relates to COVID. And then I just, the other thing, when I did connected with MSBA. I do agree, wherever you choose to start, the salary is really important. And when I talked with the MSBA folks, and you might want to reach out and connect it to people too, but just the guidance that somebody's only new their like the first year, and then they're experienced after that. So just that was their cautionary tale around retention and keeping people and those sort of things. So just make sure that we're, offering up a fair salary based on that guidance. I think that's my only thing. And again, keep it within our run rate and leveraging our business office to support that. That's all I got. Cool. All right. You guys got what you need, it looks like. So what I heard you say, and Kathy, just for the record, it sounds like they're going to be, our negotiations team is going to be meeting with Miss Dean on the 29th at 7 a.m. So just for the record, I want to make sure that we note that as board work or committee work, if you will. All right. Perfect. And then from a process perspective, the team will do their work and we'll bring it back to the board for final. Now, I would say that if things start to go directionally off the, it's not consistent with that, what I would ask is, Chair, is that you just reach into me and we'll see about needing to reconvene the board if you need additional wisdom, guidance, counsel. But otherwise, if it seems to be sticking within these guardrails, then we would just look to see at least as close to kind of where we'll be at our next board meeting, I believe is the plan then.
Next regular board meeting, Amy?
Yep. Because the contract would take effect formally July 1, right?
Yep.
So that it stays on that, annual deal. So I think at the next board meeting would then give you the time to make sure that our business office runs it by legal and those sort of things and whatnot. So, yep.
Clarification on that. Would you like us to have it run by legal prior to the next board meeting, right?
Yes,
I mean,
please.
prior to
Yes.
we bring it, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It should be as close as possible.
To finish.
To being where we want to be when it comes back.
Perfect.
Yep. And then please make sure that it gets, in the packet nice and early so that the board has an opportunity to review it. So great. Awesome. Well, I think that concludes this agenda item. Thank you everybody for sticking to it and having this conversation. That was a good one. That concludes our agenda for tonight. So I would take a motion to adjourn. If anybody would.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. This is Jessica.
All right, Jessica, thank you for that motion to adjourn. I have a first. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Beth.
All right, I've got a second by Beth. Before I adjourn, I'm just going to check in with Kathy because I can't see her. Kathy, is there anything else that you need from us this evening that I missed on my list?
I think we're good.
All right. Thank you. All right. Pending no further discussion or comment, I will call for a roll call vote. Brady Anderson. I will come back to you. Yeah, Brady Anderson.
Oh, yep. Aye, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Beth Kraska.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Aye. We have a vote to adjourn. So at 10:23 p.m., this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time this evening. Stay safe. Be well.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, Kathy, for the work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.